421. High-level decision. Mu Yue had just finished teaching Thunderclap Flash to Kakashi and had moved on to instructing Rin Nohara in Exploding Fist and Water Instant Body. Rin's chakra control was exceptional, which gave her a real edge in mastering Exploding Fist. If she could learn both techniques, her combat effectiveness would jump markedly. Exploding Fist was essentially an enhanced monstrous strength, far more powerful and with added effects, while a proficient Water Instant Body would greatly improve her mobility. Mu Yue held back on teaching Great Flame Ring, Flame Emperor, to Obito and Shisui for the moment, planning to teach it after they finished their current fire release training. In truth, Great Flame Ring, Flame Emperor didn't match the power of Fire Dragon Dance, a technique Mu Yue himself had developed. Fire Dragon Dance was an ultimate fire release, a synthesis of many master-level fire techniques, but its requirements were extremely high, so Great Flame Ring could serve as a transitional step. Just as Mu Yue was about to sit down for dinner, an Anbu appeared and bowed. Habsheng-sama, please come to the Hokage building. The third Hokage wishes to see you. Mu Yue nodded without comment and followed the Anbu. Hiruzen calling at this hour had to mean something urgent. The Hokage wouldn't normally be working late over simple Ninja Academy matters. On the walk, Mu Yue considered the possibilities. War, perhaps. As a teacher at the academy, he wouldn't ordinarily be sent to the front lines unless things were dire, but Mu Yue wasn't an ordinary instructor. His strength, even if he hid much of it, exceeded most Konoha shinobi. The role of someone that powerful in wartime was completely different from a typical chuunin. If he lacked his teaching talent, he would likely have been sent out long ago. He knocked on the Hokage's wooden door. "Enter," came Hiruzen Sarutobi's voice. Inside, Hiruzen rested a hand against his forehead, fatigue visible in his posture. "Third Hokage-sama," Mu Yue greeted respectfully. Hiruzen nodded, then spoke gravely. "Mu Yue, the village is under great pressure. The three other great shinobi villages, Hidden Mist, Iwagakure, and Kumogakure, are all watching Konoha closely. The Hidden Mist forces have even crossed into the Land of Fire and are making incursions along the eastern coast." Earlier that afternoon, the High Command had met. They had agreed that the Hidden Mist incursion on Fire Country's mainland was the most immediate threat and had to be dealt with decisively. Mu Yue already knew where this was heading. "If the village needs me, I can go to the battlefield at once," Mu Yue said. He looked determined. With his current power, even if he couldn't outright win every engagement, he could survive and retreat if necessary. He also wanted to use real combat as training for his students. The ninja world was growing more dangerous. With figures like Uchiha Madara possibly making a move, his disciples needed to grow quickly. Hiruzen's face relaxed into a satisfied smile. Mu Yue truly embodied the will of fire. With your teaching abilities, Mu Yue, you really should be cultivating the next generation from the rear. But right now, the village needs your combat power. We must drive out the enemy swiftly. Because Kumogakure had lost a top Jinchuriki replacement, High Command had decided to recall Orochimaru from the Land of Hot Water and send him back to the Land of Fire to deal with Hidden Mist. To cover the gap, Minato Namikaze would be sent to the Land of Hot Water. Hidden Mist was one of the 5 great shinobi villages. One man alone wouldn't be enough. Hiruzen had already sent Inoshika Cho and several Hyuga Jonin, and then Danzo Shimura suggested sending Mu Yue. Hiruzen had hesitated. He knew how valuable Mu Yue's teaching was, having seen how Mu Yue's instruction surpassed any results Hiruzen had achieved with others, but the pressure from the daimyo and Danzo's analysis convinced him. Mu Yue's abilities were clear: mastery of 5 chakra natures, ice release, and even the flying Thunder God technique. His combat record included defeating Tsunagakure's hero Yakura. With Flying Thunder God, his survival on the battlefield was reliable. He could always retreat if things went wrong. After receiving his orders, Mu Yue left the Hokage building and assembled his students, everyone except Metkai, to inform them of the impending deployment. He hadn't needed to notify Guy. Hiruzen had already included Metgai's squad on the list of support troops. He did tell Kakashi and the others because Kakashi's team was not on the official roster, and Mu Yue intended to take them along. Battlefield. Shisui's eyes flickered nervously. He was the only one among Mu Yue's students who had never been in a full-scale fight. Obito, on the other hand, looked indifferent. He had plenty of battlefield experience, from an early internship that turned into a major melee to the later missions Minato had taken them on. "There's something I need you to know," Mu Yue said seriously. "I've been given some important duties by the third Hokage. I won't always be able to lead you personally on every mission." He didn't say everything. While Mu Yue planned to send shadow clones to protect his students, he preferred them to face real danger without the knowledge of an ever-present safety net. That honesty changed the atmosphere. For Obito, in particular, it removed one more layer of certainty. Much of Obito's experience had come with a safety line, sometimes Mu Yue, sometimes Minato, and that security would sometimes not be there. "Mu Yue-sensei, we should have a vice-captain," Kakashi said after a moment. "If you aren't around, the vice-captain can command." Kakashi didn't want to gamble on leadership in Mu Yue's absence. If he were appointed, he could legitimately give orders, even to Obito. "All right," Mu Yue agreed. "The four of you vote." In the end, Kakashi won the vice-captaincy with a 3-to-1 vote. Only Obito voted for Rin, everyone else supported Kakashi. 422. Join the war. Mu Yue had his disciples check their belongings to make sure nothing was left behind, then led them toward the East Bank battlefield in the Land of Fire. "Rin, why did you vote for Kak?" Obito asked on the way, unable to hide his curiosity. He was more bothered by Rin Nohara's choice than by Kakashi's 3 votes or his own 0. Rin's vote felt like a signal that she trusted Kakashi more than him. Rin considered the question for a moment and answered with a gentle smile. "I just feel like Kakashi would make a very reliable vice-captain." She trusted Obito in many things, but when it came to leading a team, her experiences from missions told her that Kakashi was steadier. Kakashi could always analyze the situation and pick the best course of action, whereas Obito, though formidable in direct combat, wasn't someone she could rely on to devise tactics. Saying it bluntly would have been hurtful, so she softened it as a feeling. Obito's face fell immediately. What could be worse than the girl he liked praising another boy? Worse still was that the boy being praised was his sworn rival. "Damn you, Kakashi," Obito seethed inwardly. In his mind, Kakashi's image morphed from a disagreeable friend into an outright enemy. Losing to Kakashi in their recent internal contest, plus the prospect of having to solve a pile of questions, made him feel even worse. Learning that Kakashi had also picked up powerful techniques from Mu Yue made catching up seem impossible. Obito replayed every slight Kakashi had ever committed. "It's all Kakashi's fault. This time I'll surpass him on the battlefield," he vowed, eyes burning as he stared at Kakashi. Kakashi registered the look, met Obito's gaze for a second, and then calmly looked away. Obito's temperament was impulsive and easily thrown off. Kakashi had suggested appointing a vice-captain to Mu Yue precisely because he worried about Obito's safety. With the official backing of a vice-captain, Obito would have to obey orders even if he disagreed, and that kind of authority, authorized by Mu Yue, might matter more to Obito than even the Hokage. Seeing Kakashi's indifferent expression only fueled Obito's anger. It felt like Kakashi was saying, "You weren't even in it when I got serious." Shisui had watched Obito's expressions the whole way, but when he opened his mouth, he chose not to comfort him. Self-awareness was important. If he gave Obito false hope, telling him he could lead a team when he wasn't ready, it could cause problems later. They were disciples who lived and trained together. They knew one another well. To Shisui, the question had a clear answer: Kakashi. Putting everything else aside, Kakashi's experience already set him apart. He'd graduated early and had 5 years of ninja experience, far more than most. When they arrived at the ninja camp, Mu Yue was invited to a meeting before he'd even had time to speak with his disciples. A large tent served as the meeting room. As he entered, he recognized several familiar faces. At the head of the long table sat Orochimaru, expressionless. Mu Yue quietly appraised him. Name, Orochimaru. Chakra, 42,000. Potential, S. Skills, Yin Release, Mastery 815,000. Wind Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Mastery 3,000 Forward, 15,000. Fire Release Chakra Nature Mastery 2008, 15,000. Water Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Mastery. Earth Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Mastery. Hidden Shadow Snake Hands, Mastery. Orochimaru's panel reminded Mu Yue of Hiruzen Sarutobi's in scope, an incredible range of jutsu from S-rank forbidden techniques to ordinary D-rank ninjutsu. But unlike Hiruzen, Orochimaru's most developed skills were his snake techniques, not the 5 basic nature transformations. From what Mu Yue could tell, Orochimaru had the potential to inherit much of Hiruzen's ability, but Mu Yue suspected 2 reasons he hadn't. Either Orochimaru believed he couldn't match Hiruzen's path and therefore chose to forge his own, or Orochimaru's hunger for forbidden techniques and immortality outranked the desire to pursue combination ninjutsu. Mu Yue's impressions came from comparing Orochimaru's proficiencies, many mastery-level nature transformations, but nothing outstanding in terms of raw proficiency. To improve, there's always room, Mu Yue thought, remembering Orochimaru's appraisal at a prior Jonin meeting. The war, forcing frequent clashes with powerful opponents, would sharpen even veterans like Orochimaru and Jiraiya, though not as dramatically as it might for youth like Minato Namikaze. To Orochimaru's right sat Nara Shikaku, pineapple-shaped hair unmistakable, one of the current Inoshika-cho. To the left was Hyuga Hizashi, the younger brother of the Hyuga clan head. Orochimaru's voice cut through the tent. "Lord Mu Yue, please take a seat." His tone carried easily. "I believe you all know Lord Mu Yue, so I won't give a lengthy introduction." The jonin around the table nodded and greeted Mu Yue politely. "Of course we know him. Jonin Mu Yue is young and promising, a fine jonin of Konoha. I heard of Jonin Mu Yue's deeds in the Grass Country War. Although Mu Yue's defeat of Yakura had not been widely broadcast, he still carried a reputation in Konoha from his battlefield accomplishments and his role as an instructor." The meeting moved on. Orochimaru looked to Nara Shikaku, who stood and took charge of explaining the current battlefield situation and their assignments. Many of the jonin present had been transferred recently, including Orochimaru, so Shikaku's role was to lay out the intelligence and expectations. Shikaku pointed out the Hidden Mist's landing points and main activity areas on a large map, outlining the approximate number of Hidden Mist forces in the Land of Fire and their tactics. Hidden Mist ninja usually include at least one shinobi proficient in the Hidden Mist technique. When outnumbered and without a sensory ninja, avoid direct confrontation. He didn't need to explain the effects of the Hidden Mist technique. Everyone present knew it. The technique turned a normal battlefield into one where the enemy hid while you were exposed. A Konoha jonin frowned. Hyuga Hizashi's expression didn't change. That was exactly why Hiruzen had sent a large number of Hyuga to this front. The Byakugan was the best sensory jutsu to counter the Hidden Mist. Shikaku then listed the notable Hidden Mist combatants operating in the area. Yagura Karatachi, extremely skilled in water release. He looks young, but is an experienced veteran and currently the strongest Hidden Mist ninja we've encountered on the field. Haku, a member of the Yuki clan, an ice release specialist who employs the ice release bloodline limit. Very powerful. Hozuki Mangetsu, of the Hozuki clan, proficient in water release and capable of using the hydrification technique, which grants immunity to many physical attacks. Also very strong. And watch the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Each member is an elite jonin-class shinobi. Individually, they may not match the top 3 I mentioned, but they often operate together on assassinations. When all 7 act as a unit, they are extremely dangerous. The jonin took notes diligently. The Hidden Mist village was the most low-key of the major villages and rarely involved itself in continent-wide wars, so other villages knew little about their forces. Many jonin had heard of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, but hadn't seen detailed intel on their individual abilities. Mu Yue listened thoughtfully. Reality and the manga didn't line up perfectly. Even inside Konoha, there were capable jonin who weren't part of the story. It made sense that 2 formidable figures could emerge from the sparsely detailed Hidden Mist. After he finished, Shikaku sat and nodded toward Mu Yue. Because of his position, Shikaku had access to detailed information on Mu Yue's strength, supplied by Hiruzen Sarutobi. Knowing the capabilities of one's personnel was essential for planning. Shikaku had been surprised when he saw Hiruzen's report on Mu Yue. Mu Yue's name had appeared once in the Leaf newspaper, mentioned alongside Jiraiya for facing a tailed beast in the Grass Country War. But Hiruzen's intelligence suggested far more. Assisting Jiraiya against a Jinchuriki was one thing. Mu Yue single-handedly defeating the hidden sand hero Yekura was another. Nara Shikaku had not been present at that battle, and the newspaper's account had placed Jiraiya at the center, Minato Namikaze as the strongest assistant, and Mu Yue further behind. To learn that Mu Yue had actually bested Yekura alone was startling. Yekura's renown in the sand was greater than Minato's in Konoha. The implications of Mu Yue's achievement were enormous. Shikaku believed that if Hiruzen had not worried about proking the hidden sand village, Mu Yue's reputation would already have spread across the shinobi world. Konoha could have used him as a public figure to attract missions, but because the sand had not yet gone to war with Konoha, Hiruzen had to be careful. The village couldn't promote Mu Yue too openly without risking diplomatic fallout. In Shikaku's mind, Mu Yue was the second strongest person on this battlefield after Orochimaru in terms of strategic value. Whether Mu Yue could defeat Haku or Hozuki Mangetsu remained unknown. Only a direct confrontation could tell. Yagura Karatachi was another matter and would be handled by Orochimaru. Mu Yue smiled inwardly. Shikaku was a smart planner, and working with smart people was easier. After the meeting, Orochimaru called Mu Yue aside. Orochimaru's knowledge of Mu Yue came from Danzo Shimura, the root leader, who'd provided even more detailed intelligence, including the fact that Mu Yue had been a root shinobi. According to Danzo, Mu Yue had once been a loyal assistant whom Danzo had insisted Hiruzen assign to Orochimaru. Danzo had argued that Mu Yue would surely help Orochimaru win merits and military success. "Is there another mission for me, Orochimaru-sama?" Mu Yue asked calmly. Before departing, Mu Yue had received instructions from Danzo. Orochimaru was effectively a root ally, and Mu Yue should spend time with and assist him. Danzo's message emphasized that helping Orochimaru gain military achievements was Mu Yue's top priority on the battlefield. Mu Yue wasn't inclined to take Danzo's words too seriously. His strength meant he didn't have to bow to Danzo's will. He agreed to play along, only to avoid unnecessary trouble. Besides, with Mu Yue's abilities, a few decisive moves on the battlefield would naturally contribute to Orochimaru's record. No special effort was needed. In practice, Danzo's mission amounted to nothing more than a suggestion. Mu Yue answered Orochimaru with the same composed demeanor he carried into every situation, ready to act where the battlefield required. "I just have a few questions I'd like to ask Lord Mu Yue," Orochimaru said with a faint smile, standing and curving his lips slightly. In a public place like this, he would not discuss root matters with Mu Yue outright, but he did have things he wanted answered. Mu Yue nodded and fell in beside him, following Orochimaru to a quiet, unoccupied spot near the campsite. "Danzo should have already briefed you on what needs to be done here," Orochimaru said, stopping by a large tree and turning to face him. Orochimaru's relationship with Danzo Shimura was complicated. On paper, Orochimaru could be seen as Danzo's subordinate. He held a position within Root, but in truth, they were collaborators and, in many ways, equals. They had worked together on human experiments with Hashirama cells and on forbidden ninjutsu. Right now, their most important collaboration concerned the fourth Hokage position. Danzo wanted the post for himself, but he was realistic. Under current conditions, it was nearly impossible. His wood-release shinobi were too young. He had not obtained the Rinnegan or any Ninshu heritage. If he couldn't be Hokage, the next best outcome was to have Orochimaru take the office. The other prominent candidates had only lukewarm ties to Danzo, and if they became Hokage, might threaten his power in Konoha. Orochimaru, however, was different. Their partnership was deep, and exposure of their activities would ruin both men. They were in the same boat, each with enough evidence to destroy the other, so Danzo could throw his full weight behind Orochimaru, secure in the leverage their shared secrets gave him. "I will do my utmost to assist Orochimaru-sama in achieving military successes," Mu Yue replied calmly. "With an excellent shinobi like Lord Mu Yue assisting, this mission should yield considerable gains," Orochimaru said without hesitation. He peered at Mu Yue with curiosity. It wasn't contempt for Root so much as observation. Root had talent, but rarely true geniuses. Hiruzen Sarutobi had always tight-fistedly controlled Root's strength. He wouldn't allow its brightest minds to be funneled there. Orochimaru-sama overpraises me. If anyone's a genius among the Sannin, it's you, Mu Yue countered politely. Mu Yue had always been self-aware. Outside of sealing techniques, which he had largely cultivated himself, much of his power had come from cheating. He hadn't developed an ultimate fire release through natural talent. He'd been given perfect fire nature chakra transformation and an abundance of master-level fire jutsu from the system, and his mind now held countless memories and training templates. The same went for his breathing techniques. His proficiency allowed him to create new variations with effort. I don't think so, Orochimaru said, shaking his head slightly. At least regarding bloodline limits, you've outpaced me. I haven't successfully cultivated one. Orochimaru had spent enormous time on forbidden jutsu and biological research. He'd dived deep into wood release study, but more accurately, he had focused on the vitality contained in Hashirama's cells. Nin were too fragile, and that life force was what he truly coveted. Lord Mu Yue, may I witness your ice release? Orochimaru asked after a moment. He wasn't especially fascinated by ice release itself, but he was curious about Mu Yue's mastery. Mu Yue nodded, gathered chakra into his palm, converted it into ice release chakra, and released it. Freezing ray, a blue-white beam shot out, instantly freezing a patch of ground beside Orochimaru. Orochimaru clapped lightly twice. I very much look forward to Lord Mu Yue's performance on the battlefield. Orochimaru had read Mu Yue's file, adept in the 5 basic nature transformations, and proficient at combining natures to amplify jutsu. Even this newly acquired ice release showed a high level of fluency. He was interested to see what Mu Yue could do in combat. To help his students adjust to missions without a sensei constantly steering them, Mu Yue quickly assigned a B-rank war mission for them. Investigate Village, where a 3-man hidden mist squad was suspected to be operating. His main body was free, so he didn't send a shadow clone to follow. He accompanied them himself and left a shadow clone at camp. To be safe, he also left a flying thunder god kunai with the clone so he could be summoned back instantly in case of emergency. There are 6 villages in total. Split up, 2 per group would be faster, Obito suggested when Kakashi finished explaining the mission. 4 people dividing into pairs would be quicker, but even Obito wasn't reckless on the battlefield. If Rin encountered trouble on her own, it would be bad. That's not safe. If you want to complete it quickly, then move faster, Kakashi replied. If Mu Yue had been there to provide quick teleportation support, Kakashi might have agreed, but they didn't have that luxury now. They also lacked a true sensory shinobi. Transparent World had some abilities comparable to the Byakugan, but its range was far inferior, and it wasn't reliable as a dedicated sensory tool, especially since Kakashi couldn't use it constantly without exhausting himself. It was a trump card, not a routine tactic. Safety is the most important thing on the battlefield, Rin agreed. We can use shadow clones, Shisui offered after thinking a moment. Obito and I can each make a clone to check 2 of the villages, while our main bodies handle the rest. That improves efficiency and conserves our real body's chakra. Their reserves mattered, and Shisui volunteered because he and Obito had larger chakra pools than Kakashi and Rin. That works, Kakashi said after a brief consideration. This was a B-rank war mission. Running into enemies was likely. Shadow clones gathering intel was sensible. Feeling pleased with Shisui's solution, Obito grinned broadly and put an arm around Shisui's shoulder, as if forging an alliance against Kakashi. Shisui did have abilities Obito envied, and Obito appreciated the help. Shisui and Obito each produced a shadow clone and sent it to investigate other villages. Their main bodies accompanied Kakashi and Rin. Villagers treated the Konoha team as official envoys and freely reported all suspicious people they had seen recently. While Kakashi and his group moved through the second village, Shisui's mind suddenly filled with the memory of a fight with hidden mist shinobi. There in Tanoshita village, probable strength, 1 Jonin leader and 2 chuunin. Obito's clone is still stalling for time, Shisui said quickly, dispelling his clone deliberately to flash the report back to his real body. 2 shadow clones would have trouble defeating a Jonin squad. The mains had to be involved. Move at full speed, Kakashi ordered, and dashed ahead. A squad like that was no longer beyond them. Except for Rin, Every member of their team could beat an ordinary jonin outright. Rin wasn't a duelist on the same level, but she was far from helpless and provided strong medical support. Their four-person team's effective combat strength amounted to 3 jonin and 1 medical specialist. When the Hidden Mist Shinobi realized the Konoha ninja they had beaten earlier were only shadow clones, they tried to withdraw, but Kakashi's speed, pushing his lightning breathing, was lightning fast. He appeared like a flash and intercepted the 3 Hidden Mist attackers. Though he looked like a rookie who had barely graduated, his entrance was so decisive the Hidden Mist jonin did not underestimate him. Hearing the movement behind him, the jonin's frown deepened. There wasn't time to gawk at Kakashi's speed. He ordered his 2 subordinates to probe information instead of all-out attacking. If he rushed in and misjudged Kakashi, he could be killed, leaving his men doomed. Better to have his subordinates test Kakashi and hope for an opening to slip away. The 2 Hidden Mist Shinobi charged. One spewed water with water release, the other drew a long sword and swung. Flash! Kakashi concentrated his breathing to boost his strength, converting the chakra in his legs into lightning release and lunging in a single breath. He drew his white fang short sword and slashed. In an instant his position vanished. One of the Mist Shinobi bled where the blade had found him, while shuriken and jutsu struck empty air. Such speed! And a lethal slash, the jonin muttered, pupils contracting. He hadn't expected Kakashi to kill casually while evading. Wait, that hair! The strongest Konoha genius, Kakashi Hatake! Recognition snapped into the jonin's face. Hidden Mist had circulated intelligence on Konoha's geniuses during the chuunin exams, with explicit orders. If encountered, eliminate them. Kakashi's white hair and the lightning around him matched the descriptions. A kid still in last year's chuunin exams has this power? The jonin thought, stunned. At first he'd suspected a small-statured adult. Now it was clear this was a real prodigy. He turned to flee, not wanting to gamble against reinforcements still on the way. But a volley of flaming kunai, fire release, phoenix sage flower claw crimson, arcs toward his retreat path and forced him to stop. The kunai came from a boy younger looking than Kakashi, breathless and frozen slightly in the throwing pose. The jonin recognized him from earlier, Obito, and was incredulous. Had they stumbled into a full squad of geniuses? Phantom body flicker technique! Shisui, unwilling to hold back, activated his 3 Tomoe Sharingan and struck with genjutsu in perfect timing. Kakashi, with another razor-precise slash, killed the other chuunin and rushed to Shisui's side to help. By the time Obito and Rin arrived, one jonin was already gravely injured. Before Obito could act, Kakashi's blade finished the wounded jonin. Just missed it. Obito scratched his head, frustrated. If he'd been a hair faster, he would have gotten the kill. He had purposely stayed near Rin to ensure her safety and hadn't pushed far enough ahead. Mission successfully completed. Let's head back, Kakashi said decisively. He'd been moving and fighting at full exertion. His chakra and stamina were already more than half spent. It was best to return before anything else happened. Obito trudged back to camp with a bitter expression. He had hoped to outshine Kakashi, but hadn't even had the chance. The mission reminded him that speed mattered. With his students safe, Mu Yue returned to camp as well. As Mu Yue left, someone hidden in the foliage stepped forward. Zetsu. This guy's overprotective, Zetsu said, rubbing his temples. He even sneaks protection onto a B-rank mission. It complicated their plan. 424. 7 ninja swordsmen. Being on the front lines had made Mu Yue's life, oddly enough, a little easier. Here, he didn't have to split his attention between the ninja school and his disciples, and Orochimaru-sama hadn't given him any combat assignments yet. He wasn't the only one resting. Besides Orochimaru-sama himself, many of the jonin who had come as reinforcements hadn't been assigned field missions either. Orochimaru-sama was clearly setting a trap for the Hidden Mist. To make his deception believable, Orochimaru-sama limited only most of the jonin, leaving a small number unrestrained, and allowed all the chuunin and genin to remain active. After all, Hidden Mist had invaded the Land of Fire's mainland. It would be obvious for Konoha to send reinforcements. Orochimaru-sama wanted Hidden Mist to think Konoha was reinforcing heavily here, but stretched thin by other fronts. He deliberately exposed information about Konoha's new camp little by little to tempt Hidden Mist into attacking. Orochimaru-sama's ruse worked. In the eyes of many hidden mist shinobi, the Konoha force they faced looked like a paper tiger, outwardly the greatest of the villages, but in actual combat showing signs of decline. Sure, there were many shinobi, but their quality looked poor. If Konoha truly had the strength to meet Hidden Mist head-on, why would they need to transfer Orochimaru-sama from another battlefield? Why would so many jonin be absent and so many chuunin and genin be on the field? Yagura-sama, our intelligence has located Konoha's new camp. This is our chance to strike at Konoha's core forces, Haku reported at the Hidden Mist strategy meeting. Yagura Karatachi looked young, but he was a seasoned commander, and Haku, one of the unit's main operatives, addressed him respectfully. This new camp was found so quickly. Can we verify that intel? It could be a Konoha trick, Yagura asked calmly. He was no reckless youth. He weighed risks carefully. Haku shook his head. I don't think so. From what we've seen these past few days, although Konoha has sent reinforcements, their overall strength here still seems inferior. They wouldn't willingly engage in a large-scale frontal fight with us. Yagura considered that. He had noticed Konoha's numbers had increased, but most were chuunin and genin. Jonin were scarce. By conventional wisdom, that suggested a village short on strength. Still, there was one troubling unknown. Konoha's Nine-Tails Jinchuriki had not been seen on any battlefield. If the Jinchuriki had secretly come to the east coast, Hidden Mist might not hold the advantage. A Jinchuriki's destructive power was overwhelming. Even ordinary jonin would struggle to confront one. Yagura felt confident against Orochimaru-sama, but he didn't believe Haku or Hozuki Mangetsu could handle a Jinchuriki, and he certainly wasn't eager to face the current Ino Shikacho with one to back them up. I don't want feelings. I want facts, Yagura said, then asked, if the Nine-Tails is in the Konoha camp, how do we respond? Haku and the others were silent. Even as head of the Yuki clan, Haku didn't have the confidence to claim he could deal with a Jinchuriki. The other Hidden Mist captains exchanged uneasy looks. I understand your eagerness to win glory, Yagura finally said. But we mustn't be rash. If anything, Konoha should be the anxious party now. He wasn't criticizing Haku personally. Some shinobi were better fighters than strategists, but Hidden Mist didn't need to rush. Unlike Konoha, which faced multiple major village rivals, Hidden Mist was currently at war only with Konoha. That gave Yagura time to probe rather than gamble everything. We aren't doing nothing, Haku protested. If we miss this opportunity and Konoha moves their camp, war isn't only all-out assault or complete inaction, Yagura replied, folding his arms. We'll test them first. After outlining probing operations, Yagura dismissed the meeting and sent his trusted aides to summon the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Normally the 7 answered only to the Mizuke, age, but in wartime the 3rd Mizukage had authorized Yagura to command them. Disrupt Konoha's logistics, Yagura told the 7, pointing to a location on the map. Most of the Konoha shinobi active here are chuunin and genin. You should handle them easily. Hidden Mist had a reputation across the shinobi world for assassination and intelligence. Yagura's order was straightforward. Efficiently eliminate Konoha's mid- and low-level forces to see whether Konoha truly lacked strength or was merely pretending. Biwa Juzo, blade Kubikirabocho strapped over his shoulders, snorted. Chuunin and genin were being sent to kick puppies. Raiga Kurosuke replied evenly. It may be bullying the weak, but a mission is a mission. Suika Zanfuguki, Kuriara Kushimaru, and the others glanced at Biwa. They had fought together for a long time. If Biwa refused to follow an order for such a petty reason, any one of them would step in and do the job. Biwa's pride was loud, but his loyalty to Hidden Mist was stronger. He wouldn't defy a direct command. In the end, he merely scowled and accepted the mission. Oh, Guy, you guys are here too? Where's Teacher Chen? Obito asked, surprised when he bumped into Might Guy's team. Teacher Chen has some business. He'll arrive later, Might Guy answered. What a coincidence. We're all left without instructors, Obito said, scratching his head. Though Mu Yue was on the same battlefield, he couldn't lead them on missions because of his other duties. Is Minato-sensei not on this front? Ebisu asked. He couldn't imagine Minato Namikaze abandoning his students, and none of Obito's team had yet become jonin. Minato-sensei is on another battlefield, Obito explained. Teacher Mu Yue brought us here, but he has more important things to handle. and can't take us on missions right now. Kakashi watched as the younger shinobi reacted. Since you don't have an instructor, be extra careful on missions, he warned. Without a Jonin squad leader, even if Ebisu and Shiranui Genma were promoted to chuunin, Might Guy's team couldn't be assigned missions above B rank. Battlefield situations change fast. Even B rank missions can turn deadly. Might Guy's team, for all its energy, wasn't yet strong enough to be reckless. Kakashi thought that Might Guy alone might be able to escape from 3 opposing Jonin by fighting full out, but he wouldn't abandon his teammates. With Ebisu and Shiranui Genma present, the chances came down. As expected of my best friend, Teacher Chen said the same thing, Might Guy enthused, giving Kakashi a thumbs up. Then Obito brightened with an idea. If none of their instructors were present, and they merged teams, could they qualify for higher-ranked missions? How about you join us, Guy? Then we'd be a 7 chuunin team and could take A-rank missions, right? Obito blurted. He'd come to the battlefield eager to prove himself, to surpass Kakashi, but Kakashi's speed and skill kept overshadowing him. After a few missions, Obito had only had a brief moment of action in the very first mission. The rest were against weak opponents. He wanted stronger enemies and more chance to shine. No, not S-rank madness, just A-rank challenges. You can't just join another team like that, Shiranui Genma said uncertainly. This is the battlefield. Teams can't rearrange at will, Ebisu added firmly. Theoretically, no, Kakashi agreed after a moment's thought. But I can ask Teacher Mu Yue. Kakashi thought the merger made sense. Might Guy's power with their 7 chuunin would make A-rank missions manageable. It would also make Ebisu and Shiranui Genma safer. It'd be great to fight with my best friend, Might Guy said, eager. They went to find Mu Yue and put the proposal to him. Mu Yue smiled. You want greater responsibility? That's good. I'll mention it to Orochimaru-sama. This solved 2 problems at once. It pleased the students and made Mu Yue's supervision simpler. No need to guard disciples scattered across different squads. Mu Yue had to treat all his students fairly on the same front. He also remembered Might Guy's later fate in the original timeline, and he wanted precautions taken. Orochimaru-sama had no shortage of reasons to encourage his promising charges, and he readily approved. Might Guy's team and Kakashi's team were allowed to merge into a single unit with elevated mission authority. Without an instructor, we need a vice-captain, Kakashi said. I was our team's vice-captain, but with the new members, we should re-vote for fairness. If only Might Guy had joined, it wouldn't be necessary, but with his whole team merging in, a formal choice mattered. Everyone would listen to a recognized vice-captain. The vote was quick. Kakashi was re-elected vice-captain by 6 votes. Everyone but Obito, who stubbornly voted for Rin Nohara, put their trust in Kakashi. Might Guy inspired confidence, but Ebisu and Shiranui Genma felt Kakashi was the better choice for giving orders. Ebisu, who usually handled administrative matters, wasn't about to step up over someone with Kakashi's composure and competence. Might Guy had done missions with Kakashi and Obito back when they were intern nin. Since both Kakashi and Obito had been students of Mu Yue, Kakashi wasn't worried that adding Might Guy to the squad would ruin their coordination. Still, with Shiranui Genma and Ebisu attached to the team as well, Kakashi decided it was wiser to keep things steady and finish a few B-rank missions first, so they'd have time to gel. After they'd adjusted, they could take on higher-ranked work. He didn't expect much from Genma or Ebisu in terms of raw power. The gap was obvious, but he did worry about cohesion. Fortunately, neither Shiranui Genma nor Ebisu were flashy show-offs. Both willingly played support and didn't recklessly charge in to prove themselves. After a few days, the team's coordination had improved markedly. It's so comfortable teaming up with you guys. The mission was over before I knew it. I wish we could keep working together. Shiranui Genma said with a joking smile. That wasn't entirely a joke. Fighting alongside Kakashi and the others really was easier than many D-rank missions back in Konoha. There simply weren't enough opponents for the main fighters to deal with. The supports barely had anything to do, and yet still got the rewards. Ha ha ha, after all, we are an elite squad, Obito said proudly. Though they were all still chuunin by rank, the 4 of them together already outclassed a typical squad led by a jonin. I'll tell Teacher Chen about your suggestion, Ebisu replied slowly. Genma stiffened for a moment, then forced an embarrassed smile. No need to bother the old man with something so small. Having been taught by Teacher Chen for years, Genma knew the man's temper. If Genma mentioned shirking responsibilities, he'd get reprimanded. Teacher Chen was easygoing in many ways, but he had strict standards about his students' development. They could decline missions beyond their ability, but they couldn't be freeloaders who enjoyed the pay without growing. Genma knew that Teacher Chen wasn't rigid for its own sake. He wanted them to improve. After 2 B-rank missions, Kakashi felt the team had gelled enough to accept A-rank requests. Between missions, they even bumped into Might Guy's father, Mito Dai, at camp. The activity and troop movements there, plus the state of the front lines, gave Kakashi a bad feeling. A large-scale ninja conflict seemed likely to erupt soon along the east coast of the Land of Fire. Konoha hadn't only sent a prominent figure like Orochimaru. A sizable number of jonin and chuunin were assembling, and even low-key powerhouses like Mu Yue had been dispatched. The pattern was unmistakable. Something big was coming. Kakashi wasn't overly concerned for their safety. At their ranks, they wouldn't be assigned the worst frontline tasks, and surviving a chaotic melee shouldn't be impossible, but he did want everyone to be cautious. Finally, A-rank missions. I hope we find stronger opponents this time, Obito said, fists clenched, excitement on his face. Kakashi stopped in his tracks. This isn't an ordinary mission. In a war, unexpected situations could throw us up against enemies far beyond what we can handle. Kakashi didn't want Obito heading into battle with that eager champion mindset. It could get them all killed. I'm not as unlucky as you, Kakashi, Obito protested. He'd heard of Kakashi's streak of bad luck, 4 missions in a row with unexpected incidents, one of them culminating in a 1,000-man war. But Kakashi's warning wasn't about luck. It was about mindset. My point is to take war seriously and be cautious, Kakashi said patiently. Not that this mission will definitely have an accident just because I said so. Obito scratched his head, half understanding, half not. Seeing that he wasn't getting through, Kakashi let it go. He briefly marveled at Mu Yue's teaching skill. If Mu Yue could make someone like Obito pass theory exams, that was impressive. Kakashi suspected he would have collapsed long before teaching Obito. The mission began smoothly. They located the targets described, a jonin from the hidden mist, 2 chuunin, and 2 genin. But shortly after fighting started, Kakashi's instincts prickled. He pulled back just in time. 2 lightning-charged kunai whooshed through the air and sank into the empty space where he had just stood. He actually dodged it, Raiga Kurosuke said, surprised. For a respected member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist to fail an ambush on a boy who looked 10 would be shameful if word got out. As Raiga expected, his teammates burst into laughter. You didn't eat enough before coming? Jinin Akabino teased. Raiga's face darkened. He didn't explain. The near miss was embarrassing, but the laughter only lasted a moment. The mist jonin they'd been fighting breathed a huge sigh of relief when Raiga and Jinin approached. Recognizing the swordsman, he thought he was saved. He used a body flicker to close the gap to the approaching reinforcements, leaving his wounded subordinates behind. 2 new enemies? None of you will escape, Obito said, undaunted. Even 2 jonin didn't faze him. Kakashi's expression, however, went very serious. He sucked in a breath. He knew these newcomers. They were Raiga Kurosuke and Jinin Akabino, members of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Normally, seeing one of them meant the others were nearby. The swordsmen favored operating as a group. If it was just 2, Kakashi might have been confident, but an entire 7? No matter how well Kakashi thought of his team, he had no faith in taking on the full 7 ninja swordsmen. As a group, they were world-renowned powerhouses, stronger than most teams, even against polished groups like Konoha's Inoshika Cho. Obito, everyone, don't act rashly, Kakashi said, breathing deeply. If we make a big commotion, who knows whether reinforcements will be allies or more enemies? Obito searched his memory for information on the mist swordsman, but couldn't summon details. Ebisu adjusted his sunglasses with trembling fingers. These are the hidden mist's 7 ninja swordsmen. They act as a unit. Maybe the other 5 are hiding nearby. His recognition made sweat break out on Ebisu's forehead. This was exactly the sort of terrifying encounter he dreaded. Shiranui Genma swallowed hard. He'd believed in Kakashi and Might Guy's strength, But the seven were a different order, matured, world-class fighters. Genma suddenly wished Teacher Chen would swoop down like some mythical dragon god and blast the enemy away. Of course, that was impossible. Teacher Chen wasn't even on the battlefield. When Ebisu named them, Obito finally remembered the basic facts. 7 members, each wielding a unique sword. He winced inwardly. Maybe his offhand wish for a strong fight had cursed them. Metgai's face turned solemn. Ebisu silently prayed that only a couple of the swordsmen had arrived. Then Biwa Juzo stepped from the shadows, his giant blade Kubikirabocho resting on his shoulder. He scanned Kakashi's team with a hungry look. "We got some exceptionally easy targets. Let's finish them fast," Biwa said, leaning on his sword. Before anyone could reply, another figure appeared, an orange-haired swordsman. "Biwa Juzo, these aren't easy targets," Suikazan Fuguki said in a deep voice. 3 of them are Konoha geniuses who must be eliminated, Kakashi Hatake, Metkai, and Uchiha Obito. Kill them now. Unlike Biwa's dismissive attitude, Fuguki saw this as a major opportunity. Taking out 3 potential future threats to the Hidden Mist would be far more valuable than killing ordinary Jonin now. Biwa just shrugged, who hadn't once been a supposed genius. As more members of the 7 stepped forward, Kakashi's heart sank. Even 7 regular Jonin would be a hard fight, and these weren't regular Jonin. With the still-live Mist Jonin as well, Kakashi's team now faced 7 titled swordsmen, plus another Jonin. Obito moved instinctively to shield Rin Nohara behind him. This was the gravest danger they'd yet encountered, even worse than facing the Raikage candidate. The 7 might not have been unbeatable against the AB combo. That combination had Mu Yue or Minato Namikaze nearby in other fights. This time, no such allies were present. Everyone instinctively looked to Kakashi. He wasn't the strongest of them, but as vice-captain, he was the anchor. Obito had voted differently in a prior vote, not because he didn't respect Kakashi, but because he knew the others' votes would still put Kakashi in that role. Voting for Rin had been his way of showing respect. "Kakashi, what do we do?" Shiranui Genma asked quietly. Kakashi let out a short sigh. He was, after all, only a slightly above-average chuunin. No brilliant plan popped into his head in an instant. He scanned the 7's positions. Their formation looked loose, almost as if they didn't consider Kakashi's team real threats. But that looseness was deceptive. It cut off escape routes. If they tried to flee, at least 2 of the swordsmen could instantly sever their path. Kakashi thought through options. He was one of the fastest in the group and had a reasonable shot at escaping, and Metkai might also be able to break free. But what about the rest? He couldn't bring himself to run and leave them. As he reached his decision, he silently drew the White Fang short sword from his back. If he couldn't run, he would fight. Even against the world-class 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist, he would create any sliver of hope he could for his teammates. It was his duty as vice-captain. No words were needed. Obito understood Kakashi's intention from a single look. Fire release, great fireball technique. Obito gathered chakra in his throat, formed the seals in a blur, and expelled a torrent of flame, a huge fireball aimed at the closest of their attackers, Raiga Kurosuke. Raiga, who favored lightning release because of his sword's nature, was also a capable water release user as a Jonin of the Mist. He didn't bother to dodge. Instead, he spat a stream of water and neutralized Obito's fireball. As the fireball roared past, Shisui used it as visual cover to hurl several flaming shuriken at Raiga. Kakashi, who had been charging himself, gripped his White Fang short sword and funneled chakra into his legs, converting it to a lightning-like surge of power. He waited for the slightest opening. One clean strike to take a 7 ninja swordsman out of the fight would make everything easier. Water release, water dragon bullet. Juzo Biwa formed seals and expelled a water dragon that wrapped around Raiga, cutting the flaming shuriken out of the air and surging toward Kakashi and the others. Kakashi sighed inwardly. They had been underestimated, but the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist were no fools. Their ruse had been seen through. Fuguki Suikazan, Jinin Akebino, Kushimaru Kuriarare, and Raiga Kurosuke drew their blades and charged together, intending to finish the fight quickly. 8 gates, first gate, gate of opening, open. Second, fourth gate, gate of pain, open. Metkai bellowed and forced the 4th gate fully open, driving his breathing to the extreme. He could open the fifth gate steadily now, but doing so meant he couldn't fight at length. In a real battle, he couldn't just reveal everything willy-nilly. Leaf Great Whirlwind. Metkai moved like a living blur toward Jinin Akabino and struck a whirlwind kick. "You're fast, but you picked the wrong opponent," Jinin Akabino sneered, using his massive hammer to block the kick and counter with the blade in his left hand. He was the Mist's iron fist. Trying to outmuscle him with Taijutsu was a gamble. Jinin underestimated Guy's body control and combat sense. Jinin's blunt blade swung with crushing force, but Guy adjusted at the last fraction, avoiding the full brunt and slammed a chakra-laced palm, his leaf hand blade, against Jinin's hammer. Clang! The impact shoved Jinin back several paces. His hand tingled from the shock. He blinked in surprise. The hammer should have punished a normal body terribly for being struck so directly, but Metkai stood untouched, as if his palm were iron. Jinin wondered, half to himself, is his palm made of iron? He didn't know Guy's rock breathing was finely honed. Under intense focus, it could dramatically increase his body's defense. His toughness was not ordinary. "Even if your body is iron, I'll shatter you." Jinin snapped back, driving his hammer forward again. Meanwhile, Kakashi couldn't afford to wait. Reiga hadn't offered a clear opening, but Kakashi had already built up too much power to hold back. He surged forward like a flash. Lightning release, lightning fang. Reiga spun his twin lightning blades, sending arcs of lightning outward. Kakashi was forced to break. He couldn't cover his entire body with chakra armor. His reserves were limited. Reiga then used body flicker technique to close in, his twin blades dancing like venomous snakes that spat lightning. Kakashi activated the transparent world. Everything sharpened. It wasn't that Reiga slowed. Kakashi's perception and reaction had just become faster. He met Reiga's next swing and blocked it cleanly. Blade after blade was perfectly stopped by Kakashi's short sword. Not a single strike grazed him. Reiga frowned. His swordsmanship was decent for the hidden mist, but being pressured like this by a 10-year-old was humiliating. He quickly judged Kakashi as a prodigy of swordsmanship. If the age of samurai still existed, he might be a sword saint. The most important thing for a ninja is ninjutsu. Reiga chose retreat. He gathered chakra into his blow, adds and shot lightning at Kakashi. As an assassin, he didn't cling to pride. He'd rather fall back than be killed for stubbornness. In the brief exchange, Kakashi had left 2 scratches on Reiga's body. Kakashi dodged at extreme speed, feeling a pang of regret. He'd hoped Reiga would be prideful enough to let Kakashi finish him quickly. Most ninjas didn't fight that way. Fire release, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. Obito, still in flame-breathing chakra mode, focused his nature transformation and spewed a vast sea of flames. The inferno evaporated the incoming water dragon and split into 2 smaller fire dragons, which charged Fuguki Suikazan and Kushimaru Kuriare, who were surging forward. The water dragon had been slow and dodgeable, but in this situation, Obito couldn't risk dodging. Their team didn't have the luxury. To protect Rin and the others, he had to block with ninjutsu. Shisui quietly opened his Sharingan and fixed his blood-red gaze on Kushimaru and Fuguki. He flashed with body flicker, attacking. He couldn't allow them to close in. Obito's residual flames outside his specialized mode were limited. Fuguki slashed Samahata through the fire and cut it in 2. Samahata, feeling the heat, twisted its hilt twice against Fuguki's arm in contempt. The sword hated flames. It was a small detail, but Shisui's 3-Tomoe Sharingan noticed. Phantom body flicker technique. Shisui cried, creating dozens of afterimages that closed around Kushimaru and Fuguki. Kushimaru scowled. Shadow clones? There shouldn't be that much chakra. He sliced through 3 of Shisui's figures with his long, needle-like blade, yet the pierced Shisui didn't vanish or bleed. They were illusions. Just when Kushimaru and Fuguki thought all Shisui's forms were insubstantial, several other Shisui figures struck back, forcing them to halt. Obito used the opening to shield the 3 weaker teammates and fall back. Sharingan, illusion, physical, must be genjutsu, Kushimaru thought, suddenly connecting the dots. He slammed a palm into Fuguki to disrupt his chakra flow and snap him out of the genjutsu. When Fuguki's mind cleared, only 3 Shisuis remained in his sight, 2 clones and the original. A genius not on the list. Our luck's even better than we expected, Fuguki muttered. He threw a palm back at Kushimaru. Simply realizing you were in a genjutsu didn't free you. The simplest cure was help from another. Shisui had expected his technique to be seen through. Facing the level of the 7 ninja swordsmen, he was prepared for his tricks to be countered. Kushimaru and Fuguki surged with chakra and charged Shisui. They weren't worried about Obito escaping. 3 of the 7 ninja swordsmen weren't just spectators. Trying to abandon your comrades and run? No way you're getting past me, Juzobiwa announced, using water instant body technique to plant Kubikirabocho across Obito's path. Jinpachi Munashi quietly positioned his explosive blade Shibuki to block another way, while the slightly wounded Miss Jonin hovered nearby. Who would abandon their teammates? Don't underestimate us, Obito declared, shielding Rin behind him and plunging further into flame-breathing chakra mode. He couldn't worry about chakra consumption anymore. He'd seen Kakashi and Guy fight. Any of the 7 ninja swordsmen could not be taken lightly. Facing 2 of them at once left no room for error. Even with their reserves, their stamina for prolonged combat was poor. It's not that their chakra was low, but their abilities exceeded what their current bodies could sustain. Fire release, great fireball technique. In flame-breathing chakra mode, Obito didn't need seals. He spat out a massive high-temperature fireball. With enemies on all sides, he couldn't waste chakra. The fireball consumed relatively little. Juzobiwa, surprised by the hand-sign-less technique, easily sidestepped and used Kubikirabocho to swat aside shuriken thrown by Ebisu and the others. Too weak, Ebisu gritted his teeth, frustration and helplessness washing over him. He wanted to help Kakashi and the others relieve the pressure, but rushing in clumsily would only be more burden. Their job was to stay safe and support with ranged ninjutsu where they could. Rin stepped forward to engage Juzobiwa, so Obito could focus on Jinpachi Munashi and the Miss Jonin. Rin wasn't as strong as Kakashi and the others, but with Shiranui Genma and Ebisu assisting, holding one opponent off temporarily was doable. From inside the transparent world, Kakashi could observe the entire battlefield clearly. Sweat beaded on his forehead. This was an unprecedented crisis. It had only just begun, and they were already at a severe disadvantage. One member of the 7 swordsmen was still unengaged, and their sword was glowing with chakra as if preparing an attack. Might Guy, even in the gates, couldn't take Jin and Akebino. Kakashi had pressed his advantage, but Reiga had grown cautious. Shisui was pinned and bleeding. Obito held on thanks to flame-breathing chakra mode and Rin's help, but Biwa, Munashi, and a Miss Jonin still pressed hard. The swordsmen didn't even need their 7th to act. If they held a little longer, the Konoha kids would break. 8 gates. 5th gate. Gate of limit open. Might Guy had no time to hesitate. The situation demanded it. He tore through the limit and pushed into the 5th gate. Chakra surged from him again. Leaf. Strong whirlwind. Guy's kick blasted Jin Akebino aside, and he rocketed over towards Shisui. Shisui, already besieged and cut by long steel wire slashes, was on the verge of collapse. Hozuki Mangetsu leveled his twin swords, Hiramekare, and fired a chakra orb. Guy, watch out! Kakashi shouted the instant he saw it. Chakra blasted from Guy's feet, leaving an afterimage as he streaked forward. The orb struck Guy's afterimage and detonated in a huge explosion. A cloud of yellow dust cleared to reveal a deep crater. With an attack like that, unless Guy covered his body with chakra armor, he would be badly hurt. Now they relied on the transparent world not only to dodge but to warn one another. What would happen when Kakashi couldn't sustain it anymore? That barbed sword can absorb chakra. It's best dealt with using pure taijutsu, Shisui panted, reminding them. Without Shisui's 3-tomo Sharingan and body flicker, a normal Konoha Jonin would likely be dead from the pincer attack. Might Guy nodded and pushed his rock breathing to the absolute limit. He struck a whirlwind kick at Fuguki Samahata and shoved him back. Shisui hauled his exhausted body and fully engaged Kushimaru, buying space for Guy. In the 5th gate, Guy was their best chance to take down a swordsman fast. Shisui needed to open that opportunity. Guy was desperate. If he couldn't fell one of the 7 ninja swordsmen quickly, they would die unless external help arrived. Jin and Akebino, repelled earlier, did not pursue Guy, but went after Kakashi. The tables turned, and Kakashi now faced a fresh assault. Fortunately, Jinin's heavy-handed style suited Kakashi. If he couldn't land blows, his strength was meaningless. With transparent world boosting him, Kakashi shifted back to defense. Still, Hozuki Mangetsu recharging his chakra orb kept up enormous pressure. Kakashi might not be able to avoid another orb. Golden Skyline. Seeing things worsening, Metkai unleashed the strongest ninjutsu he had right now. He produced a nunchaku, holding the stick in his left hand and the chain in his right, planted his feet, spun his body to the right, left hand forward, right hand drawn back, index and middle fingers extended, the sequence he had practiced 1,000 times in the past year. He moved with impossible speed, and as he charged at Fubuki, his left hand traced like drawing a sword while his right hand slashed forward, and a thin golden line flashed through the air. Fubuki raised Samahata to block, but then he caught Shisui's 3 Tomoe Sharingan in his peripheral vision and froze for a heartbeat. A hesitation like that would be meaningless in ordinary life, but in the heat of battle, it was fatal. Boom! A huge impact exploded. Blood spray. D. A bloody hole appeared in Fubuki's abdomen, and he flew back, spewing fresh blood across the ground. The Mist Swordsmen were stunned. Fubuki Suikazan, one of their stronger members, had nearly been killed by a 10-year-old. How is this possible? Lord Suikazan! The Mist Jonin, who had been fighting Obito, cried in shock. He felt lucky he hadn't been the target. When Obito and Guy unleashed their full power, he might have died before the swordsman even arrived. I underestimated you. You are not weak, Juzo Biwa admitted as he began to reassess the young Konoha shinobi. Obito, Kakashi, Guy, and Shisui were not children to dismiss. For 10-year-olds to hold off 2 Mist Swordsmen even briefly was remarkable. But the victory cost them. Kushimaru's long needle flashed toward Shisui's heart. To Kushimaru's surprise, it didn't pierce. Shisui's chest seemed protected by something as hard as iron. Kushimaru quickly changed targets, slashing at Shisui's abdomen and leaving a long, narrow wound. He then retreated. He didn't want to stay and fight a taijutsu user who could send Fubuki flying with a single blow. Shisui. Metkai looked at the blood seeping from Shisui's side, fury and worry twisting his face. Shisui exhaled and shook his head to say he was okay. Compared with Fubuki's condition, his wounds were light. The plan had worked. As repayment for saving him, contribute your chakra. Jinpachi Munashi signaled to the Mist Jonin, motioning him over to Fubuki. The Jonin, knowing enough about the 7 ninja swordsmen, understood. He flickered with body flicker technique and moved next to Samahata to help. Samahata, like a shark, clamped down on the Mist Village Jonin and drank his chakra through the bite. Metkai didn't know exactly what the sword was doing, but he couldn't stand idly by. He rushed forward to interrupt, only to be stopped by a glowing chakra orb that streaked at him. Boom! The ball slammed into the ground and detonated, throwing up a cloud of dust. Samahata fed the stolen chakra through its hilt into Suikazan Fubuki, accelerating the sword-wielding Jonin's cell regeneration. The bleeding wounds on Fubuki sealed in an instant. The Mist Jonin, whose chakra had been drained, collapsed, utterly spent. Healed in moments, Suikazan Fubuki rose, gripped Samahata, forced Metkai back, and with one hand hoisted the exhausted Mist Jonin as he retreated. Guy stared in disbelief. Such grievous injuries should not mend so quickly. Even with Rin Nohara's best efforts, recovery on that scale would be impossible. Damn it, we picked the wrong target, he thought. Kakashi's face darkened as he watched Metkai's near miss. He had expected that Guy's golden skyline would either kill an enemy outright or at least render one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist combat ineffective. That would have made the rest of the fight manageable. They had no intelligence on the swordsman's capabilities and hadn't known that Suikazan had access to a self-healing aid like Samahata. Guy's blazing assault had only incapacitated a Mist Jonin, not one of the swordsmen. One mistake had bred another. The battle was spinning out of Kakashi's control. Hope looked thin. Metkai had poured a colossal amount of stamina and chakra into his attack. Thanks to his breathing work and the transparent world, his energy was now well below half. Obito had made no tangible comeback and could hold out only a few more minutes at best. The opposition, by contrast, showed no sign of tiring. The balance had swung toward the hidden mist. Kakashi did not surrender. He calmly handled the pincer assault from Raiga Kurosuke and Jinin Akebino. He had been in desperate spots before, When Obito and Guy weren't yet Genin and had been surrounded by Kumogakure Jonin, he'd thought only one of them could be saved. Obito and Guy had shown him what never give up really meant. Guy had broken through more gates, and Obito had awakened his Sharingan, and together they'd pulled through. In the chuunin exams and later fights, Kakashi had learned to cling to the sliver of a chance that perseverance could produce. He would protect his comrades until his strength utterly failed. Might Guy hadn't chased Suikazan. Shisui was badly wounded, and Guy had intended to take him to Rin for treatment. Kuriarare Kushimaru attacked as Guy tried to move Shisui. He wouldn't risk going alone, since Suikazan had been gravely hurt a moment before, and Kushimaru had no Samahata to mend him. Hozuki Mangetsu came in to assist the mist side. Raiga and Jinin were concentrating to finish off Kakashi, and Mangetsu wanted to help eliminate the most dangerous shinobi in green. Guy had no choice but to abandon the plan to get Shisui to Rin, and instead struggled to hold off the combined assault so the wounded comrade wouldn't be hurt further. Guy glanced toward Obito. He couldn't dash straight there. Instead, he slowly nudged the fight in that direction. Obito, of course, wanted Rin to patch Shisui up. The initiative was not theirs. All they could do was minimize the damage. I guess I have to become the green beast, Guy thought. He inhaled deeply. Jaw setting, he would force open the 6th gate. He had barely been practicing with the 5th gate for a month. Forcing the 6th now could wreck his body and might cause irreversible internal damage. But circumstances demanded risk. With their comrades barely holding on, the team needed raw power more than prudence. 8 gates. 6th gate. Gate of view. Open! Guy shouted. A green blur burst across the battlefield, scattering the foes nearest him with a whirlwind kick. He stared, stunned, then realized why the gate failed to open cleanly. Someone familiar had appeared. Might Guy's father, had come. The commotion in the area during his assignment had drawn him, and he'd found his son's team in dire trouble. Dad! Guy's shock shifted quickly to relief and then worry. Reinforcements were desperately needed, but if it was only his father, Guy would rather he hadn't shown up. As children, they idolized their fathers. Later, they learned fathers are human too, with limits. Guy knew Dai's strength. Without the 8 gates, Dai wasn't much stronger than him. Even with equivalent gates, Dai's style differed. Arriving now was necessary, but not necessarily decisive. When others registered Dai's arrival, their expressions changed. Shiranui, Genma, and Ebisu brightened until they saw who it was and went solemn. Munashi, Jinpachi, and the rest tensed at the sudden arrival, then relaxed when the newcomer proved unfamiliar. The truly formidable had names that echoed across villages. Dai, though capable, was not someone they'd expected to see. To be facing the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist like this. Guy, you've grown faster than I thought, Dai said, a thumbs up for his son. He knew the swordsman's reputation. Leave the rest to me. Now is the time to be limitless. Guy understood immediately. Dai meant to open the 8th gate, the gate of death. Once that gate is opened, the 8 gates released formation attains power beyond the sum of the first 7, at the cost of consuming the user's life force. It cannot be closed until the user dies. Guy couldn't bear the thought of his father burning himself out, though he also understood Dai's reasoning. Young fool, Raiga sneered from his attack against an already taxed Kakashi, glancing at Dai's green attire and bowl-cut hair. He laughed the way killers sneer at what they perceive as foolishness. Dai didn't care for the barbs from a stranger. Might Guy's voice rose in protest. Dad, don't open the gate of death. The 7th gate is enough. Please, believe in our strength. Guy believed Dai's 8th gate could kill the swordsman, but the cost was unthinkable. He tried once more to open the 6th gate himself, spurred by seeing Shisui drenched in blood and Kakashi exhausted. He would not allow his father to die for them. Gate of view open, he roared again. The 6th gate flared to life. Green, leaf-like energy rippled outward, chakra welled in him in a rush, strength swelled to an unprecedented level. The foliage at his feet stirred, though there was no wind. Hozuki Mangetsu and Kuriarare Kushimaru nearest him froze in shock. No one expected a 10-year-old to unleash such a terrifying aura. Biwa Juzo shoved Rin away and stared at Guy with grudging unease. Guy should have been a prime assassination target for the mist. The boy's potential was that dangerous. Dai laughed and opened the 7th gate. He radiated a blistering blue steam as raw power exploded from him. The Gate of View is the last gate before death. It exacts a severe toll. Muscles and organs suffer heavy damage. Even after deactivation, a touch can be agony. Dai had spent 20 years cultivating the 8 gates. He trusted Guy to survive if he stepped in now. The combined force of father and son in green surged across the field. The mist fighters who'd been underestimating them tensed. In this moment, they no longer dismissed the 2 taijutsu users in bright jumpsuits. Dai shot toward Kakashi. He was the most dangerous opponent right now, isolated and worn thin. Jinin Akabino swung his large hammer, and Dai caught the hammerhead in a clinch, flinging Jinin into a nearby tree. Raiga gathered lightning and fired a blinding bolt at Dai. With the 7th gate's speed, Dai danced among tree branches and evaded, landing at Kakashi's side. "Uncle Dai, thank you," Kakashi gasped, drained though grateful. But there was no respite. Jinin and Raiga charged again, and Dai had to re-engage. Kakashi deactivated Transparent World and assisted Dai. There was no time for recovery. If Kakashi had been at full strength, he and a 7th gate Dai might have been able to quickly down one of the swordsmen, but that was a fleeting thought. He had to be pragmatic. 2 moves in, Kakashi noticed a problem. Dai's raw power and speed were immense in the 7th gate, but his taijutsu finesse wasn't on par with Gai's. Their coordination was poor, while Jinin and Raiga, teammates who fought together regularly, moved seamlessly. Though they had the power advantage, they couldn't land decisive blows. Across the field, Guy still had his hands full. After Suikazan dealt with the Mist Jonin, he advanced on Obito. Biwa Juzo joined the assault on Guy. Suikazan had concluded Samahata had seen little use against a taijutsu-only opponent like Guy, so he swapped to Biwa, comfortable from the side with the advantage. Biwa's Kubikirabocho was wielded with lethal precision, always aiming for weak points. Together with Mangetsu and Kushimaru's pincer, Guy was in a vice. Shisui was worse off. His unhealed wounds left him leaking chakra and sluggish in movement. He could no longer be an asset. Guy had to protect him. "Obito!" Shisui shouted, forcing out the intelligence he had gleaned from fighting Suikazan. "The barbed sword absorbs chakra, and it hates fire." Obito immediately wrapped his fists in chakra fire. Each blow was blistering. Samahata recoiled from the heat and tapped Fuguki's arm less willingly. Fuguki scowled and backed away, then countered with water release to strike Obito. Samahata had a will of its own. If Fuguki forced it to take repeated flame hits, the sword might refuse future cooperation. Samahata was notoriously capricious. Boom! Munashi Jinpachi swung his explosive blade Shibuki and released a dozen exploding tags from the weapon toward Rin. Water instant body jutsu. Rin tried to vanish into a water form substitution, but the blast caught her. Black burn wounds marred her skin. Even with Genma and Ebisu trying to help, going up against the 7 swordsmen was too much for a single medic. Obito's Sharingan flared crimson. He wanted to rush in, but Suikazan seized the moment to strike him instead. Might Guy watched, helpless to intervene as 3 master swordsmen, Biwa, Mangetsu, Kushimaru, pressed him hard. Hozuki's Hiramakare had terrifying destructive force. Guy's bare body couldn't endure its full strike. Kushimaru's Nuibari wires could tear flesh with a single slip. Biwa's power and reach made him the deadliest of the 3. Guy could only keep Shisui from getting worse. Munashi advanced on the downed Rin, greatsword raised to cleave. Genma plunged forward and took the blow with a kunai. He was thrown 5 meters by the kick that followed. Munashi pivoted and slashed, driving Ebisu back. Genma picked himself up, shaken and trembling. Facing the 7, he realized how far they were behind. He charged again. Both he and Ebisu were tossed aside like rag dolls. Munashi's greatsword loomed over Rin. One swing would end her. At that instant, a short blade of lightning flashed out and met the falling sword edge. Kakashi's white fang short sword. He'd decided the best he could do, given his dwindling chakra, was play firefighter, rush to save whoever was in greatest peril. With that intervention, Munashi's blow was halted. Kakashi had one such chance left. He could not keep doing this indefinitely. The heavy dread in Obito's chest lifted a little, but Obito had been fixated on Rin and was exposed. Suikazan took his opportunity and struck. Guy's pressure remained unrelenting. Biwa, Mangetsu, Kushimaru, each was a formidable jonin in their own right, and Guy's body was already taxed. Protecting Shisui was the limit of what he could do. Guy, Dai said quietly but with an edge of resolve. Do you remember what I told you? Youth is boundless. Death doesn't extinguish it. To die protecting something important, that is the summit of youth. Guy's throat tightened. I remember, but you also told me that for what truly matters, no matter the pain or sadness, you must fight to the end. Even if it costs your life, you must protect it with your own hands. For me, Dad, you are something truly important too. They looked at each other. Two generations standing at the same crossroads. Guy wanted his father safe. If it came down to it, he'd take the risk himself. His breathing steadied. Dai's gaze softened. Guy had grown in strength and heart. Dai prepared to open the gate of death. He had the right to give last advice now because one of them had the 7th gate and the other the 6th, a narrow window where conversation was still possible. But Kakashi and Obito had no such luxury. The fight was at its most precarious point. No, Guy said, and an idea had just struck him. I still have a rock-breathing technique. Chapter 428, Mu Yue, who is never late. When Might Guy first began learning the breathing technique, Mu Yue explained its 3 main stages. The first is total concentration breathing. By focusing the breath, one can heighten physical abilities. This marks entry into the breathing technique. The second is total concentration breathing, constant state, where the breath remains highly concentrated around the clock. Mastering this boosts the body noticeably and makes the technique's enhancements apparent. The third stage is the chakra mode unique to each breathing technique. Each chakra mode grants different effects. The rock-breathing chakra mode, the one Might Guy cultivates, amplifies the body comprehensively, making its wielder terrifyingly strong. Mu Yue had once demonstrated just a hint of that power. In rock-breathing chakra mode, she needed only a finger gun tap, and the river dozens of meters away exploded into a 10-meter-high wall of water. That image seared into Might Guy's memory back at the Ninja Academy. After that day, he trained relentlessly in rock breathing, hoping to match Mu Yue's strength. Rock breathing is one of the toughest breathing techniques. Entering its chakra mode is rarer still. Mustering it was beyond him for a long time. Yet his earliest progress outpaced many because he had grasped the technique's meaning in a fight to defend his father's honor. Now, Might Guy felt that same comprehension return. No, it was even stronger. He had more to protect this time, more at stake. The way of the rock's power lies in protection, he murmured inwardly. He had never fully accessed rock-breathing chakra mode before, but his breath told him he could now. It wasn't empty bravado. Rock-breathing chakra mode! He clenched his fists. Rage widened his eyes, and his heart hammered. His breathing drove to an unprecedented extreme. With each inhale, he felt a surging strength flood his body. It was unlike anything he had felt. Of course, such power came at a cost. His chakra was burning faster than ever. Shisui, right beside him, and also a breathing practitioner, was the first to notice the change. Then the opponents did. Seasoned assassins, they sensed immediately that their adversary had shifted. What's with this guy? He keeps getting stronger, Hozuki Mangetsu muttered, frustration tickling his voice. This fight had become suffocating. They were the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, legendary. But here they were, nearly losing to a group of 10-year-old Konoha shinobi, and their enemy kept on improving. The Might Guy before them now was stronger than the one who'd started the battle. Hozuki Mangetsu leaped back to create distance and fed a heavy dose of chakra into his twin swords, Hiramakare, firing a chakra orb at Might Guy. Kuriarare Kushimaru manipulated steel wires to seal escape routes. Biwa Juzo shaped hand signs and summoned a huge water dragon bullet to trap him. They had divided the task: offense, binding, and suppression. Morning Peacock. Might Guy's punches blurred. They came so fast Shisui could not count them. The friction with the air ignited flames. A fireball coalesced and rode the wind from his strikes, slamming into the incoming water dragon. Boom! The dragon was incinerated and evaporated. The sudden blaze forced Kuriare Kushimaru to abandon his wires and dodge. That works too. Biwa Juzo looked pale. His water release had been vaporized by a fire-born taijutsu, something he had never expected. If those high-speed punches hit him, his robust frame would fare no better than his water dragon. Hozuki Mangetsu completed his charge and unleashed his chakra orb. Leaf Hand Blade. Might Guy poured chakra into his palm and sliced through the orb with a transparent air current. The ensuing explosion kicked up dust and gray-yellow mist that swallowed his figure. Elite hidden mist shinobi like Kuriarare were trained to ignore such obscurance, even dense chakra mist, but their reflexes couldn't match Might Guy's. A solid punch connected with Kushimaru's chest, sending him flying 10 meters. The blow used no fancy technique, only plain, brutal force, yet it left Kushimaru vomiting blood and contorted in pain. Hozuki Mangetsu's face shifted. Might Guy had changed more than expected. His power surge wasn't something they had predicted. Not only could the green brat block a chakra orb, but his speed and strength had become devastating. Tsukazan Fuguki's expression darkened at the sight of Guy fighting with such ferocity. It was humiliating, the 7 ninja swordsmen being pushed back by children. If news of this spread, the hidden mist would be ridiculed, while Kakashi and company rose in reputation. What's with this green brat? He can hurt Kuriarare in a 1-on-3. Munashi Jinpachi's sinister smile vanished. His face hardened. They weren't just ordinary jonin of the mist. They were the 7, direct subordinates of the Mizukage. How could Might Guy gain such strength out of nowhere? You go help them. I'll finish off the rest, Tsukazan Fuguki ordered, confident he could take the weakened Konoha ninja remaining nearby. Munashi Jinpachi nodded and rushed toward Might Guy. Kakashi watched, inwardly relieved and worried at once. Whenever things looked bleak, Might Guy shouldered the pressure. But could Guy's body withstand the simultaneous strain of rock-breathing chakra mode and the 6th gate of the 8 gates? Kakashi knew enough about both from fighting Guy and from Mu Yue's lessons. Every gate opened after the 3rd inflicted physical damage. If the body was hardy, the harm could be minimal. If not, the consequences were severe. Might Guy had forced open the 6th gate and layered rock breathing on top of it. Kakashi feared the toll. The longer this went on, the worse it would be. Kakashi tightened his grip on his short blade and scanned for an opportunity. Obito, beside him, was wounded and low on chakra. He'd even deactivated his Sharingan to maintain flame-breathing chakra mode. Their situation was dire, but that also made the enemy complacent, an opening Kakashi intended to exploit. Obito met his glance and understood. He gathered his last reserves. It has to work, Kakashi thought. He wasn't worried Obito wouldn't carry out the plan. He was worried he wouldn't have enough chakra to use whatever Obito bought him. But he had to try. If he failed, they could only hope Might Guy would break the encirclement. As Suikazan Fuguki advanced with sword raised, Obito set his body aflame with his remaining chakra. Fire release, blazing collision. He hurled himself forward in a near-suicidal assault. Samahata, sensing the intense heat, resisted. Suikazan hesitated and shifted tactics at the last moment, forming a water whip. As the whip struck Obito, the flames exploded outward. The blast sent Obito crashing and knocked Suikazan back with its shockwave. Suikazan's face registered genuine shock. No one in the hidden mist trained for suicide strikes, and Obito didn't look like a fanatic. Fortunately for the mist, most of their side was already knocked out of the fight. The explosion only disrupted them briefly. Kakashi took his chance. He pushed his breathing to the brink. Even almost out of chakra, he felt a powerful current gather. He had no time to wonder where it came from or why his heart raced so fast. This was the last chance Obito had given him. Thunderclap flash. Godspeed. A yellow flash streaked through the battlefield. Suikazan Fuguki felt a dizzying sensation and then, bewildered, saw a massive headless body collapse. His mind registered the speed and then nothing. He blacked out forever. Kakashi sank to one knee, clutching his chest and gasping. His body ached, but inside he swelled with joy. He had protected his comrades. Killing one foe was small but significant on this battlefield. With Might Guy engaging the Mist Swordsman, Kakashi and his team just needed to recover and press the advantage. But he had underestimated how devastating 8 gates plus rock-breathing chakra mode could be. Golden Skyline! Might Guy extended his index and middle fingers like blades and swept them in a small, oar-like arc. A brilliant golden line sliced the battlefield. The water wall split in two. Kuriare Kushimaru's steel wire snapped, and Biwa Juzo braced Kubikiribocho in front of him. To his horror, the enormous blade shattered, breaking into fragments. The residual force threw Biwa Juzo 17 meters back. He hit the ground hard. How, my Kubikirabocho shattered from Taijutsu? Biwajuzo stared, his worldview shaken. His blade could block ninjutsu easily. It had just been broken by Gai's Taijutsu, even with protections. Munashi Jinpachi, Hozuki Mangetsu, and Kushimaru were all stunned. If they had known this, they never would have engaged Kashi and company without calling in more jonin. Jinin Akabino's eyes narrowed, the urge to retreat flared. Suikazan was dead. Biwa was out of the fight. Kushimaru severely wounded. Nearly half their 7 had been lost. Continuing was riskier than withdrawal. Reiga Kurosuke exchanged a look with Jinin. Both wanted to flee. Might Guy's performance was terrifying. This was no raw prodigy, but a powerful, grown warrior. With Might Guy and Maito Dai together, the mist had little chance. Leaf Dragon God! After Golden Skyline, Might Guy unleashed a massive green dragon with a kick, heavily wounding Munashi Jinpachi. The last traces of mist resolve crumbled. Biwajuzo retreated. Hozuki Mangetsu fired a chakra orb and fled. Kushimaru used body flicker among the trees and began to retreat, and Munashi tossed explosive tags as cover while withdrawing. Reiga and Jinin combined to repel Maito Dai briefly and then pulled back. No matter how skilled they were, the 7 knew how to escape in unison. Might Guy moved only to chase briefly, then delivered one more distant air chop and stopped. His body was near its limit. He had achieved his goal of protecting his comrades and didn't need to pursue kills. Kakashi let out a slow breath. They had survived another desperate moment. But until they returned to camp, he kept his guard up. The battlefield was unpredictable, and a new enemy could appear. With Might Guy's 8 gates and rock-breathing waning, the only effective fighter left might be Maito Dai. Then a blue-white beam struck the fleeing Munashi Jinpachi and froze him solid. Mu Yue's disciples' faces lit up. This was Mu Yue's ice release. Kakashi relaxed fully. With Mu Yue here, even someone like Yagura Karatachi would be manageable. Obito, still smudged with black ash, smiled too. Mu Yue's presence erased their lingering dread. You should thank your perseverance. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to arrive in time, Mu Yue said, tapping Obito's forehead gently with a wry shake of his head. In truth, Mu Yue had been there much earlier. When his disciples had fallen into danger, Mu Yue had already used Flying Thunder God to rush to the battlefield. He had been poised to intervene several times. He couldn't just watch Maito Dai force open gates or his students die, but his disciples had proven capable. Mu Yue had waited until the immediate danger passed to step in and secure the enemies. If someone wrote my methods into a novel, I'd be criticized for letting my students come so close to dying, Mu Yue thought with a sigh. He understood such criticism. If he'd had a teacher like himself, he might dislike that teacher too. Even if death could be avoided, the pain was real. Why torment them when enemies could be crushed? Yet Mu Yue saw no better way. This world favored the strong, and Uchiha Madara watched from the shadows. Mu Yue had no choice but to push his students so they would be strong enough to resist his schemes. If he had 6 paths level power, perhaps he could shield them entirely. For now, he did what he could. No matter how much you persevere, it still depends on whether I can arrive, Obito joked. Might Guy gave a thumbs up of approval, and the students agreed, relieved. Thank you for your trust. I'll take it from here. Mu Yue smiled gently and turned his attention to the retreating Hidden Mist ninjas. 429. Yellow Flash? Name, Haku Chakra, 72,000 skills. Ice Release, Mastery, 3/600th or 15,000. Water Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery, 3,515,000. Wind Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery, 2,715,000. Ice Release, Ice Dragon Killer, Mastery. Ice Release, Ice Meteor, Mastery. Haku was someone to be taken seriously. From the stats alone, among the Konoha Shinobi on the East Bank battlefield, only Mu Yue and Orochimaru could confidently suppress him. Ice Release, at over 3,000 proficiency, plus respectable proficiencies in wind and water release, and several mastery-level techniques, Haku was one of the stronger opponents Mu Yue had met. Mu Yue used transformation to copy Haku's information without ceremony. The mastery-level Ice Release was worth recording. Mu Yue's own Ice Release was only just above 1,000 in proficiency, still skilled, not masterful, and he mostly used it against weaker foes. Against strong opponents, it was difficult to rely on. After copying Haku's data, Mu Yue's transformation database was full. Storing information on more shinobi would mean deleting something already there. Your ice release is interesting, Mu Yue said, but you've run into me. Haku didn't strike immediately. He studied Mu Yue first. Most ice release users in the world came from the Yuki clan, and Haku had never seen the nature before, an ice release shinobi from another village. He knew Mu Yue's face. Haku was the head of the Yuki clan, the strongest ice release user alive. No one understood ice release better than him. Fighting Mu Yue, an opponent's ice release, would be all but useless. Has his burst technique run out? Raiga Kurosuke guessed, eyeing the exhausted Metkai. Guy had been unnaturally strong moments ago, clear evidence of a burst secret technique that boosts power at a cost. Such techniques usually come with time limits and side effects. Seeing Mu Yue and 4 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist together felt good for Raiga. Haku was the unknown variable. With Haku plus the mist swordsman, Raiga judged their side favored. There was no way Mu Yue could be stronger than Haku, defeat Haku and still handle all 4 of them, he thought. Kakashi's expression shifted when he clearly saw Haku's face. It's him, he said. He'd collected intelligence on the Mist's known strong fighters and recognized Haku, Hidden Mist's ice release master. Kakashi was relieved Mu Yue had arrived. Without him, even Guy's 6 gates and rock breathing mode might not have been enough. Their luck had been terrible. An A-rank mission had turned into this. Do you know him? Obito asked. Kakashi nodded and relayed what he knew about Haku. He's strong, but he can't beat Teacher Mu Yue, Obito said confidently. His chakra and stamina were nearly gone, but with Mu Yue here he felt safe. That confidence needs matching strength, Mu Yue said, adjusting his black-rimmed glasses with a smile. Haku was powerful, but he'd chosen the wrong opponent. Only 2 people on the East Coast Konoha force could beat Haku one-on-one, and Mu Yue was one of them. Haku smiled, relaxed. Those words are true, but I have the strength. You don't need to act yet. I'll handle him, Haku told Raiga and the others. It was rare to face an ice release user from another village, and Haku wanted to test Mu Yue. Munashi Jinpachi thought Haku foolish. This was war, not a duel, but Haku had saved him once already, so Munashi kept silent. The rest of the Mist Swordsmen shared the sentiment and stood down. The Mist Shinobi Haku had brought, however, were not idle. They moved to block Mu Yue's and the Konoha group's retreat and gathered chakra, preparing to strike Kakashi and the others. You really are someone who picks the worst options, Mu Yue said, shaking his head. If Haku had let the Mist Swordsmen gang up on him, he might have lasted longer. This solo show would only speed their deaths. Ice release, ice meteor. Haku formed hand signs and poured ice release chakra into 6 massive ice cones above Mu Yue's head. They fell like moss, sieve projectiles. Mu Yue calmly pulled 2 flying thunder god kunai from his pouch and tossed them toward Raiga and the others, then used body flicker to rush at Haku as the ice cones were about to strike. The cones slammed into the ground with thunderous booms, carving craters. So fast, Haku murmured, surprised, and sent another wave of ice chakra at Mu Yue. Ice release ice blade. He formed 2 huge ice blades and slashed at the charging Mu Yue. Mu Yue gathered chakra into his hands, hardening it like a protective armored coating. His fist smashed into the ice blade and shattered it. The Mist Shinobi watching were stunned. Haku's ice was harder than rock, and yet Mu Yue had broken it with his bare fist. His strength might be primarily Taijutsu, Haku thought, and used body flicker to create distance. He launched another ice release, but Mu Yue had vanished. Raiga, facing Kakashi and the others, drew his lightning blade without guilt. He barely paid attention to the single kunai flying toward him. One was aimed at Munashi Jinpachi. Raiga moved to dodge and raise his blade when Mu Yue appeared at his side with Flying Thunder God. How could Raiga not notice a person suddenly materializing? He tried to change course but couldn't outrun Mu Yue. Exploding fist! Mu Yue released a chakra-laced blow into Raiga's back. A crushing force exploded through Raiga's spine to his brain, and he fainted from the pain. He was launched through the air, smashed through 8 large trees, and collapsed. Mu Yue didn't stop. The second kunai was already heading for Munashi Jinpachi. The sudden shift was too fast. Munashi hadn't figured out how Mu Yue had done it. Mu Yue appeared at Munashi's side, and this time, infused chakra into the kunai and drove it through Munashi's heart. Flying Thunder God technique. Munashi breathed as the kunai pierced him. He spoke the name too late. Even if he'd known the technique beforehand, Flying Thunder God left no time to react. Obito was thrilled. Of course it's Teacher Mu Yue. The Flying Thunder God is amazing, he said, wide-eyed. They'd had a hellish time against the Mist Swordsman. Kakashi and Obito had barely managed to kill one Suikazan Fuguki under extraordinary circumstances. Mu Yue had killed 2 in the gaps of his fight with Haku. Obito already fantasized about using Flying Thunder God himself, arriving to save Rin at the last moment with a dramatic, "I'm not late, am I?" It was intoxicating. Kakashi thought about intelligence. Mu Yue kept a low profile for a reason. Even if Raiga and the others had known Mu Yue's identity, they might not have escaped, but they wouldn't have been taken so completely by surprise. When Mu Yue first appeared next to Raiga, Jinin Akebino and Hozuki Mangetsu were stunned. But when Mu Yue moved again to Munashi's side, they reacted. The Yellow Flash was one of the younger generation's top powerhouses. Flying Thunder God's details had been collected by the major villages. Jinin and Mangetsu backed away, creating distance between themselves and Kakashi's group. Mu Yue was their superior, better caution than a repeat of Raiga and Munashi's fate. The Hidden Mist Shinobi, who had come with Haku, were in shock. 2 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist, symbols of the Hidden Mist, had been cut down in front of them like nothing. It was a blow to their pride. Flying Thunder God! Could the Yellow Flash on the grass country battlefield be a Konoha rumor? Or is the real Yellow Flash here disguised among us? Haku wondered, looking at Mu Yue. If Mu Yue truly was the Yellow Flash, Konoha had deployed major force against the Hidden Mist. Haku's earlier orders had been careless and disrespectful. He corrected his stance and gathered chakra. Killing the Yellow Flash would bring a glory unlike killing an ordinary Konoha Jonin. If he succeeded, Haku imagined a path toward the 4th Hokage's position. Haku didn't need to order the Mist Forces. They moved on their own and prepared to overwhelm Mu Yue together. Haku maintained his pride. He couldn't say he'd handle the fight alone and then immediately call everyone in. Ice Release, 1,000 flying water needles of death. Haku poured chakra into Ice Release, producing a dense volley of ice senbon and sending them toward Mu Yue. He had also been tracking where Mu Yue's Flying Thunder God kunai had been placed, ready to hit Mu Yue the instant he teleported. Water dragons and other techniques followed. Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet Technique. A Mist Jonin spat a water dragon at Mu Yue. Hozuki Mangetsu released chakra through his twin blades, Hiramekare, and shot a chakra sphere. Jinin Akebino held his great sword, waiting for the right moment to strike. Ninjutsu rained down on Mu Yue. He simply made a shadow clone. Fire Release, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. The main Mu Yue formed flames. Wind Release, Pressure Damage. The clone spat a high-pressure wind sphere. When the wind met the fire, it became a horrific fire hurricane. The wind fed the flames until a sea of fire roared forward, burning trees to black ash. The incoming senbon and water jutsu melted and evaporated in the blaze. Explosions rocked the clearing. The attacks vanished into heat and smoke. Only charred trees and scorched earth remained. Haku stared in confusion. Water Release counters Fire Release, yet Mu Yue had used fire and wind so effectively he hadn't even budged. Perhaps the Yellow Flash's strength had leapt forward again, Haku thought. Minato Namikaze was 20 and still growing. But Haku corrected himself. The combination was simply versatile, not invincible. The pairing with Flying Thunder God was poor. One could not teleport and instantly perform complex hand signs, and a slow opponent would avoid it. Still, Haku silently updated his notes on the Yellow Flash's capabilities. Even the Hidden Mist Jonin stood frozen by Mu Yue's display. Watching from the shadows, Zetsu thought Mu Yue's jutsu was powerful, but within reason. He couldn't fathom how Sosuke had trained Fire Release to that particular intensity. After the clever defense, Mu Yue produced 3 more kunai from his pouch and prepared for the next move. 4:30, Golden Thread Crushing Ice. Dragon Mu Yue's chakra flared in his palms as he threw 3 kunai toward the Hidden Mist Shinobi. The kunai carried no elemental transformation, just ordinary blades, but even so the Mist Ninja tensed, scrambling to block or evade. A 4th kunai whistled from a large tree at their flank. Whoever heard it barely had time to react. Because it came in so fast and from such close range, it struck almost immediately. Mu Yue vanished to the flank of the hidden mist squad by using a flying thunder god kunai left earlier by his shadow clone, then tossed a shuriken. Shuriken shadow clone technique. Under Mu Yue's ninjutsu, the shuriken multiplied continuously, becoming a dense rain of blades that descended on the hidden mist soldiers. Ice release. Ice rock dome. Haku was the first to react. He condensed ice release chakra and raised thick ice walls around himself. Several other mist ninja used their own defenses or tried to flee, but most of them couldn't withstand the close-range shuriken net. Some swung swords to deflect 3 shuriken only to be pierced by more. Others used body flicker but lacked the speed and were pierced. 2/3 of the hidden mist team fell beneath Mu Yue's shuriken assault. Among the survivors, many were wounded. He even left a shadow clone hiding nearby, Haku realized. If Mu Yue wasn't stopped quickly, it wouldn't be long before the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist and Haku's subordinates were all dead. Ice release, cold tide. Haku poured a huge amount of chakra into ice release and unleashed it at once. Cold air radiated from him. The ground around froze in an instant. Haku deliberately controlled the effect so the living hidden mist ninja weren't harmed, but the corpses were sealed in ice. The ice rapidly crept to Mu Yue's feet. Mu Yue calmly entered flame-breathing chakra mode and unleashed intense heat to counter the encroaching cold. Haku blinked, faintly surprised that Mu Yue stood his ground against the cold tide instead of being frozen. Still, Haku hadn't intended to stop Mu Yue with this technique alone. The cold tide was meant to set up his next move. Hozuki Mangetsu, regretting having come with Haku instead of returning with Biwa Juzo and the others, fired a chakra ball to restrain Mu Yue, hoping the enemy would be careless and not leave the area with Flying Thunder God, giving Haku an opening to wound him. The remaining hidden mist ninja followed suit and pressed Mu Yue. Jinin Akabino did not join the coordinated assault. He watched Mu Yue, who countered casually with fire release, waiting for a single opening to cut him. No matter how strong someone is, one precise slash was all it took to kill or cripple him. Haku gathered more chakra and roared, "Ice release! Ice dragon kill!" He spat out a torrent of ice release chakra that coalesced into an enormous ice dragon. The ice on the ground surged to empower it, the dragon ballooned to enormous size. Around Mu Yue, the frozen ground didn't join the dragon. Rather, it congealed into a cone aimed like a spear at him. Good thing we're not in snow country, Obito muttered when he saw the ice dragon. He'd be twice as powerful there. Still, he had little doubt about the outcome. Environmental boosts mattered, but not against someone like Mu Yue. "No, it targets us," Kakashi said as the dragon abruptly turned and charged the allied shinobi. Haku smiled. His earlier request for a one-on-one with Mu Yue had been motivated by curiosity and pride, meeting an ice release user from another land. But in a real fight, victory justified any tactic. The dragon's immense range had little chance of hitting Mu Yue, who could teleport with Flying Thunder God. Aimed at the smaller group, however, it could force Mu Yue to confront it. 8 gates, 6th gate. Gate of view, open. Might Guy threw himself forward and opened the 6th gate. "Uncle Guy, don't rush," Kakashi called, shaking his head. Haku's attack was more than it seemed. Might Guy, even with the 6th gate, might not be able to withstand it. But, with Mu Yue present, they could take a chance. Everyone still carried Mu Yue's Flying Thunder God kunai, and Mu Yue himself could act if needed. He hadn't spoken, so Kakashi trusted him to handle the situation. Mu Yue teleported back to their side with Flying Thunder God. He told his disciples with a small smile, "Step back a little. There'll be a lot of ice shards." They fell back a few meters as Mu Yue switched from flame-breathing to rock-breathing to enhance his physical power, pushing it to the limit and activating Transparent World. He put his left hand before his body, his right behind his waist, extending his index and middle fingers. Might Guy's eyes burned with excitement. He recognized the posture immediately. Mu Yue was preparing to use the devastating golden skyline. "He can use that on a dragon this size?" Might Guy grinned. He had no doubt in Mu Yue's ability and wanted to see the light this technique unleashed. "Golden skyline!" Mu Yue erupted in chakra and charged. Against the massive ice dragon, Mu Yue looked small, like a mantis trying to halt a chariot. Yet as he struck, drawing us a sword-like line with his fingers, a single golden filament flashed. There was a tremendous explosion. White ice dust billowed. Chunks of ice shattered and flew outward at extreme speed. The impact tore craters into the ground and sent shockwaves that rustled leaves and flattened hair. When the dust cleared, the dragon was gone. Only scattered shards remained. How? Haku stared at the demolished center in disbelief. His full-power ice dragon had been broken cleanly by taijutsu. It's the same taijutsu as that green brat, Hozuki Mangetsu breathed, but the power is completely different. Metkai golden skyline had been devastating enough before, almost killing Suikazan Fuguki outright and breaking through a defensive net. But Mu Yue's golden skyline dwarfed it. If Mu Yue had used that against any one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, none would have survived. Haku's instincts told him to flee. He tried to shift position with body flicker technique, but Mu Yue had anticipated it. Wind blades expelled by Mu Yue's shadow clone pinned Haku, preventing his escape. Mu Yue materialized in front of him. Ice release, ice rock dome. Haku made one last desperate attempt to shield himself. But Mu Yue's fingers sliced through the ice dome and through Haku's body, ending him. Haku's subordinates were stunned. Haku had been far from flawless, but he had been strong, and they hadn't expected him to fall so easily. Metkai's face lit up with training fervor. This is what a true golden skyline should be, he thought. Compared to Mu Yue, his own technique still lagged far behind. Kakashi, watching, couldn't help but compare the atrocity to the third Raikage's famed spear technique. Golden skyline might well rival the Raikage's strongest attack. Die! Jinin Akabino lunged in that instant, seizing Mu Yue's brief arm movement as Haku fell. He burst forward and slashed at Mu Yue's neck. Mu Yue vanished from sight. Jinin's great sword crashed into the ice wall, spraying shards. Then Mu Yue reappeared beside Jinin, a kunai in hand, and drove it into Jinin's heart. The man went down bewildered, dying before he could understand how Mu Yue had moved so instantly without a visible flying thunder god mark nearby. Sometimes dead people are useful, Mu Yue said, glancing at Haku's corpse. When he killed Haku, he'd taken the opportunity to plant a flying thunder god mark on the body. Hozuki Mangetsu, watching his comrades die like chickens, found sweat soaking his clothes. He turned and ran without hesitation. He still had a chance to survive if he outran Mu Yue. The other mist ninja tried to flee too, but 2 of Mu Yue's shadow clones sealed the exits and cut down those who tried to escape. Mu Yue's main body caught Hozuki and killed him with a Rasengan to the chest. When the killing ended, Mu Yue moved quickly to clear the field. He gathered the lost swords and rolled the bodies of Haku and the others into a summoning scroll. This time he didn't hide what had happened. The 7 swordsmen and Haku were major players on the Eastern Bank battlefield. Konoha would notice. Mu Yue's strength was already obvious. There was no reason to cloak it entirely. He preferred concealment that matched his status and power, not needless secrecy. After tidying everything, Mu Yue led his disciples back to camp. Although his power had made the difference, he still needed chakra and could not ignore the broader battlefield. Once they reached the camp, Mu Yue checked his panel. The life mission rewards for his disciples had been settled. 431. The disciples exploded with gold coins. Name, Kakashi Hatake Life Mission. True strength lies in protection. Main goal, protect his companions and everything he cares about. Mission progress, 100%. Remaining trigger count, 4. Mu Yue was surprised to see Kakashi's life mission jump straight to 100%. He became the first disciple to complete a life mission. Still, since the system settled progress in 50% increments, the result made sense. The notification listed Kakashi's progress rewards. Moderate sword training experience, lightning release chakra nature transformation, mastery level, and a sword-related skill draw scroll, mastery level. Another message followed. Disciple Kakashi Hatake successfully protected his companions in a desperate burst, earning additional progress rewards, item upgrade scroll, and lightning release skill draw scroll, S+, mastery level. So there are S+ draw scrolls, Mu Yue murmured, eyeing the 100% rewards with a new curiosity. He'd never seen a scroll like that before. If S+ existed, then perhaps SS or even SSS might as well, but the harder tiers would be far more rare. Mu Yue had already gotten a mastery-level lightning release nature transformation. The second mastery level nature reward instead converted into 3,000 points of proficiency. That influx of lightning release training filled his head. After claiming the rewards, Kakashi's life mission reset to 0. Mu Yue didn't immediately use the draw scrolls. He checked the life mission progress of his other disciples. Kakashi wasn't the only one who'd changed. Name, Metkai. Life mission, walk the path to the strongest taijutsu. Main goal, become a top-tier taijutsu expert in strength and reputation, proving to all that one can be powerful even without ninjutsu. Mission progress, 28%. Metkai's progress didn't spike as dramatically as Kakashi's, but it increased significantly. He triggered a settlement reward and moved closer to the next. His gains read, moderate physical enhancement, fist and leg-related skill draw scroll, mastery level, and evening elephant, mastery level. The enhancement wasn't a huge body upgrade, but physical improvements were harder to get than chakra, so it was still valuable. The fist and leg draw scroll fit Metkai's taijutsu focus, just like Kakashi's sword draw for his swordsmanship. Obito's life mission nudged forward too, though not enough for a settlement reward. Mu Yue guessed that once news of the clash spread, reputation gains might push others further. Reputation could even influence a future Hokage bid. Mu Yue clicked the item upgrade scroll. He didn't have many system-granted physical items, mostly consumables like kunai, shuriken, and cultivation elixirs, plus a pair of black frame glasses and the Rokudo Shakujo. The upgrade menu showed only 3 options, kunai, shuriken, and the black frame glasses. Mu Yue hesitated, then chose the glasses. If he'd been allowed to pick the Rokudo Shakujo, he would have, but strengthening the glasses made more strategic sense. The scroll wouldn't produce a radical transformation, only bolster the item's current capabilities. Souped-up kunai and shuriken would likely only match those made by a skilled weapon master. The enhanced black frame glasses, however, would amplify non-offensive utility effects, more useful to him right now. Item enhancement scroll has been used. Black frame glasses successfully enhanced. Black frame glasses can conceal major changes throughout the body, increase intellectual aura to a certain extent, and once worn, will never fall off or be damaged unless actively removed by the wearer. From head to whole body, this makes transformation much more convenient, Mu Yue observed, reading the upgraded description. For him, transformation wasn't meant as a primary combat skill. His main advantage lay in his high-level, powerful techniques. He already had multiple perfect-level skills: fire release chakra, nature transformation, armament haki, lightning breathing, and water breathing. Many of his techniques were powerful, high-proficiency abilities imported and localized from other worlds. He often enjoyed an intelligence advantage even before a fight began. Scanning and copying other people's skills couldn't meaningfully raise his power ceiling. The transformation skill itself was limited by proficiency, and copying very high proficiency abilities would consume enormous chakra and yield diminishing returns. Transformation was an auxiliary tool to enrich his options. With the enhanced glasses, Mu Yue saw new uses for transformation. He could deliberately mislead enemies with transformed combat. His ice release was only at the proficient level, but if he transformed into Haku and fought with a suddenly formidable ice release, opponents who'd known his previous level might assume he'd trained ice release extensively. That false intelligence could steer adversaries, like Uchiha Madara and Black Zetsu, into faulty conclusions. Given that teaching his disciples inevitably leaked some information to those two, planting misleading impressions could be strategically valuable. After using the item enhancement scroll, Mu Yue prepared to draw the skill scrolls. As usual, he washed his hands, not because it was necessary, but because it steadied him. He first used the fist and leg-related skill draw scroll from Metkai. Fist and leg-related skill draw scroll has been consumed. Obtained skill, 6 powers, mastery level. A spinning wheel resolved and the pointer stopped. Instantly, a flood of taijutsu training experience entered Mu Yue's mind. The system had localized the 6 powers for the ninja world, whereas the original concept came from a different fictional universe. Here it required chakra. The 6 powers counted as a single skill, but actually comprised 6 taijutsu techniques: Soru, body flicker, iron body, paper arts, moonwalk, tempest kick, and finger gun. Mu Yue already had a proficient level body flicker technique, but as a whole this upgrade was meaningful. especially for someone like Metkai, for whom ninjutsu was difficult. Rock-breathing enhancements plus 6 powers would make his taijutsu exceptional. To Mu Yue, 6 powers' biggest value lay in adding aerial mobility. Moonwalk let a user briefly walk in the air, improving tactical maneuvers. Next, he used the sword-related skill Draw Scroll. Sword-related skill Draw Scroll has been consumed. Obtained skill, Fire Thunder God, Mastery Level. Fire Thunder God was a lightning-breathing sword form created by Agatsuma Zenitsu in its origin story, a blend of speed and power that looked impressive in practice. It fitted Mu Yue's growing sword repertoire. Finally, Mu Yue stared at the S+ ranked lightning release skill Draw Scroll, his highest level draw yet, and clicked without hesitation. Lightning release skill Draw Scroll, S+ has been consumed. Obtained skill, One Thought Cut, Mastery Level. The draw completed and a deluge of training experience hit him. Sword techniques, lightning release nature transformation experience, enough that Mu Yue felt as if he'd spent centuries diligently practicing lightning release sword arts. Even aside from the new skill, the byproducts were enormous. His sword proficiencies were maxed out across the board, and his lightning release chakra nature transformation gained an additional 1,000 proficiency points. That raised his lightning release proficiency to 5,000. Though still slightly behind wind and water, those natures had system bonuses for mastery level. The figure already outclassed most shinobi in the ninja world. After cataloging his new memories, Mu Yue went to report to Orochimaru. Orochimaru was the battlefield commander and the highest-ranking ninja on the field. With Mu Yue's root connection, he had to be informed. Orochimaru-sama, Mu Yue began without preamble. My disciple squad encountered the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. With Maito Dai's assistance, they killed Suikazan Fuguki and repelled the rest. Orochimaru paused to consider. If his memory served, Mu Yue's squad had been newly promoted chuunin, no ninja over 10 years old, and Maito Dai's surname suggested a link to Metkai. Orochimaru had a faint impression of that squad from earlier reorganizations, but he hadn't expected them to match up against the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, 7 extremely skilled jonin from the Mist Village. It seems a group of extraordinary geniuses has appeared in Konoha, Orochimaru said, sounding impressed. He believed Mu Yue. There was no reason for him to lie, and Mu Yue struck Orochimaru as intelligent and sane. Mu Yue continued. When the 7 ninja swordsmen retreated, I moved to block them, but at that moment Haku arrived with a mist squad. The injured Biwa Juzo and Kuriare Kushimaru managed to retreat under their cover. Haku. Orochimaru's eyes flickered at the name. With Haku involved, this had been more than a skirmish. Between the 7 ninja swordsmen and Haku, you and your disciples fought a small-scale elite engagement. Besides the retreating Biwa Juzo and Kuriare Kushimaru, every other mist ninja present was killed by me on the spot, and we captured 5 of the 7 swords, Mu Yue finished. He reported the whole process without concealment. He'd sustained no injuries. He'd killed Haku, 4 members of the 7 ninja swordsmen, and multiple mist shinobi without taking damage. That performance exceeded Orochimaru's expectations. He'd thought Mu Yue might beat Haku or Hozuki Mangitsu at best. You've truly surprised me, Lord Mu Yue, Orochimaru said with a faint smile. The encounter's impact on the broader campaign was huge. Hidden Mist had lost a strong warrior in Haku and 5 elite members of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Orochimaru's prior plan to lure the enemy into battle would be hard to execute now. He needed to change strategy. I'd like to discuss more details with you, Orochimaru said, rising, but first we must convene an emergency war council. The engagement altered the entire eastern coastal front of the Land of Fire. Given the losses suffered by Hidden Mist, Orochimaru decided to shift to a more aggressive policy and force the Mist to engage. Orochimaru didn't call every jonin of Konoha to the tent. He summoned only a handful, those who held important positions on the current front. Small matters called for large meetings, large matters for small ones. Because the meeting's decisions would shape the direction of the whole battlefield, its proceedings were confidential. Besides Mu Yue, Orochimaru invited only 5 Konoha jonin. Hyuga Hizashi, head of the Perception Squad, the 3 members of Ino Shika Cho, Nara Shikaku, serving as deputy commander of the forces, and the head of the medical squad, who oversaw logistics and medical ninjutsu. Orochimaru wasted no suspense. He stated the facts plainly. Today, Lord Mu Yue, Might Guy, Lord Mu Yue's disciples, and Haku encountered the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Haku, Munashi Jinpachi, Jinin Akabino, Raiga Kurosuke, Hozuki Getsu, and Suikazan Fuguki were killed on the spot. Suikazan Fuguki was slain by Lord Mu Yue's disciple. The others were killed by Lord Mu Yue. The tent fell silent. Everyone's pupils constricted. Shock was written across every face. If anyone else had made such claims, they might have been doubted, yet Orochimaru spoke as commander, and his words carried weight. The result sounded almost unreal. In the middle of a war, as if from nowhere, the enemy's elite had been annihilated. For a strategist like Nara Shikaku, the feeling was especially acute. Nothing about war was purely about raw power. Otherwise, a village would simply send a few top fighters to finish things. Strength had to be applied at the right place and time, and you needed troops to apply it. Mu Yue had somehow combined both. This was a battle of both strength and luck, Shikaku thought. Running straight into the 7 ninja swordsmen and Haku without being swamped by enemy numbers was luck. Defeating them was Mu Yue's strength. Neither factor alone would have produced such a result. Shikaku's mind went immediately to tactical possibilities. I need to reassess Hayate Mugetsu's strength. He may not be much weaker than Orochimaru. Perhaps he could tie down someone like Yagura Karatachi on the field. Inoichi Yamanaka looked at Mu Yue with surprise. Mu Yue was younger than him, and Inoichi knew instinctively he could never match Mu Yue's accomplishment in his lifetime. The Yamanaka techniques were support-oriented, rarely geared for single combat. Akimichi Choza simply grinned and gave Mu Yue a thumbs up. Hyuga Hizashi, though he had little prior impression of Mu Yue, felt genuine admiration. The ninja world respected strength, and Mu Yue had not only demonstrated it, but had made a major contribution to Konoha. Even Orochimaru, who rarely showed surprise, accepted the astonished expressions in the tent. This was intelligence that even he found striking. Before we discuss our next plan, Orochimaru said, Lord Mu Yue, how many of your disciples can still bring their full combat power to bear? And to what extent can Might Guy fight again? It wasn't just Mu Yue who had shocked them. His disciples and Might Guy had also performed extraordinarily. Though many of them were chuunin, they had stood against the 7 ninja swordsmen and even slain one. If those disciples were still fit to fight, Konoha essentially had a squad capable of rivaling the Mist's elite. Nara Shikaku's expression went thoughtful. He hadn't paid much attention to Might Guy and Mu Yue's disciples before. As deputy commander, he had a mental list of squads with significant combat capacity, and Kakashi's team wasn't on it. If he remembered correctly, Might Guy had been notorious in Konoha as a perennial genin, but Orochimaru's question suggested their contribution had been far greater than rumored. No one interrupted, though some were puzzled by Orochimaru bringing up Kakashi and company. When you didn't know, the best course was to listen. Shisui, Obito, and Rin should recover combat capability after about 10 days of rest, Mu Yue answered after a moment. Kakashi's condition is worse. He'll need at least 3 weeks. Might Guy's is the most serious. He won't be able to fight for at least 6 weeks. I plan to send him back to Konoha to recover. The others absorbed the timeline. Shisui, Obito, and Rin's injuries were mostly external. Medical ninjutsu could correct those quickly. Kakashi's use of a powerful thunderclap flash had taxed his body the way the Demon Slayer Mark did, and that required a longer recovery. Might Guy's situation was the worst. The 8 Gates is a forbidden ninjutsu with terrible side effects. He had opened the 6th gate and layered rock-breathing chakra modes on top of it, pushing his body close to its limit. Without exceptional conditioning and training, an ordinary chuunin's body would have broken under that strain. Their repelling of the 7 ninja swordsmen was an extraordinary burst, Mu Yue explained. It's not a normal level of strength for them. Might Guy will need time to convert what he gained into lasting power. When Might Guy goes all out, he can hold off 2 opponents at the 7 ninja swordsman level at once, but the burst won't last long. If someone opened the gate of death, they could beat the whole 7 by themselves, but that's not a normal combat capability. It's an extreme measure. Nara Shikaku's shock returned as he reconsidered the sequence of events. He had assumed Mu Yue, without a combat assignment, simply went out, met Haku and the 7 swordsmen, and dealt with them. But Mu Yue's account suggested a different story. Mu Yue's disciples were on a mission when they unexpectedly encountered the 7 swordsmen. A fierce battle erupted, and the disciples, helped by Metkai, managed to kill Suikazan Fuguki and force the 7 to pull back. Only then did Mu Yue and Haku arrive, and only then did the astonishing outcome occur. Shikaku couldn't hide his astonishment. He had so many strong individuals on his field and hadn't realized it. A squad capable, however briefly, of standing toe-to-toe with the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist was worthy of being called powerful. He repeated the name silently. Metkai. He planned to meet him after the meeting. The perennial chuunin rumor was clearly out of date. Metkai's strength rivaled 2 of the mist's swordsmen. The others expressed varying mixes of surprise and bewilderment. Inoichi sighed inwardly at the ferocity of the younger generation. If Mu Yue and his disciples were that strong, Konoha's prospects had changed. The head of the medical squad, too, was stunned. Metkai's past reputation might linger, but after this encounter, it would be impossible to see him the same way. Stories would spread that a chuunin had fought on par with 2 of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Orochimaru nodded. He abandoned the idea of turning Kakashi's team into an elite assassination unit. Based on Mu Yue's report, the squad's main power lay in Metkai, then Kakashi, then the others, and with Metkai and Kakashi both needing lengthy recovery, they were unreliable for the coming conflict. Orochimaru's original plan had been to exploit Konoha's earlier apparent weakness on the east bank, expose a weak camp to bait the Hidden Mist into a large attack, and then counterattack. But Hidden Mist was no fool. Having just lost multiple elite shinobi, Haku and several of the 7 ninja swordsmen, they would not fall for a simple trap. Moreover, Mu Yue had not only removed Haku, the Yuki clan leader, but had decimated the Mist's signature 7-men assassination squad. Hidden Mist would not believe Konoha was weak. So Orochimaru's new plan was to turn up the pressure, send large forces to hunt down as many Hidden Mist ninja as possible, find their main bases, and force the Mist into a large-scale war with Konoha. If there were squads who could rival the 7 ninja swordsmen, even briefly, Orochimaru would send them out without hesitation to hunt the Mist. It's inevitable there'll be injuries after such a major battle, Orochimaru said to Mu Yue, sounding neither regretful nor harsh, but conciliatory. I'll report your merits to the higher-ups. He couldn't use unrecovered shinobi now, so a word of praise was the best way to secure goodwill. Though Orochimaru had a cold reputation, he knew how to handle people when worth his while. Mu Yue was one of those rare shinobi, strong, competent, and a route-trained operative, exactly the sort of person Orochimaru liked to recruit. Orochimaru already entertained the idea of drawing Mu Yue to his side. For someone aiming to be Hokage, trustworthy lieutenants were essential. Mu Yue was not yet his, only lent by Danzo Shimura, with whom Orochimaru had long collaborated. Orochimaru didn't want to be bound by Danzo if he ever reached the top. He believed that by revealing Danzo's true face and demonstrating his own appeal, he could persuade Mu Yue to defect. With that settled, Orochimaru and Nara Shikaku moved into the formal discussion of the specific combat plan. Most of the planning took place between them. The others chimed in with details and suggestions as needed. After they returned to camp, Biwa Juzo, far worse off, went straight to the medical ninja for treatment. Kuriare Kushimaru, with lighter wounds, reported the mission to Yagura Karatachi. We ran into a strong Konoha squad during the mission. They outnumbered us by 1. We fought hard but were ultimately defeated, and Suikazan Fuguki was killed in the engagement, Kuriare said, his voice careful and solemn. In the Hidden Mist, blunt honesty could be deadly. He used words carefully to soften the blow. In a sense, he wasn't lying. The Konoha team did have 1 extra person, even if not everyone on their side seemed useful. Fuguki didn't die in vain. Several Konoha shinobi were seriously wounded by us, but our losses were heavier, so to avoid further disaster, we pulled back. At that moment, an ice release user appeared and blocked our retreat. Haku came to assist us as well. Because Biwa and I were badly hurt, we withdrew early. The rest of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist continued fighting the Konoha team alongside Haku, he summarized. Yagura listened, face impassive. The full deployment of the 7 swordsmen was one of the village's trump cards. Only a handful of Konoha squads on the east bank could possibly match them. A powerful Konoha squad, who was leading them, Ino Shika Cho, he asked after a moment's thought. If Orochimaru had led them, the result wouldn't have looked like a mutual defeat. Yagura suspected either a famed team or a major figure. Kuriare's expression showed a flicker of awkwardness under his mask, but he answered frankly. Kakashi Hatake, Metkai, Uchiha Obito, and other Konoha prodigies. Yagura's eyes narrowed. These were not the names he had expected. He knew them from reports on the chuunin exams. Young geniuses, certainly, but chuunin-era boys. You're saying you lost to a group of Konoha shinobi who became chuunin less than 2 years ago? He asked sharply. The 7 swordsmen were established veterans. Genius status alone shouldn't have been enough to defeat them. Cold sweat beaded on Kuriare's brow under Yagura's pressure. He had to explain. Our intelligence is outdated. Their current strength is far greater than during the chuunin exams, especially Metkai. He's mastered a powerful taijutsu called Golden Skyline. He used it twice in the fight. The first time he gravely wounded Fuguki, we only got him back into fighting condition thanks to Samehada's treatment. The second time he shattered Kubikiribucho and nearly killed Biwa. He clenched his teeth. Lying now would be pointless, bodies would be recovered, and inconsistencies would ruin him. Not all of them were prodigies. One was a middle-aged taijutsu specialist. If he hadn't stepped in to block Jinin Akebino and Raiga Kurosuke, we would have eliminated Mitekai's team. Yagura's expression went thoughtful. The loss stung, but it also revealed terrifying information. A handful of young Konoha geniuses could already challenge the 7 swordsmen. If they were this strong now, what would they become? Then he thought of Haku. No matter how promising the enemy's future, the present could still be extinguished. If Haku and the opposing geniuses could be killed now, their future strengths would be meaningless. After questioning them for details, Yagura dismissed Kuriare and sent scouts to the battlefield. When they returned, the report sent a chill through him. Lord Haku is missing, and Lord Suikazan Fuguki and 5 other members of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist are missing. On the field, there are only the corpses of our village shinobi. The intelligence officer reported quietly, eyes downcast. Haku is missing? Yagura repeated without emotion, though his knuckles were white on the table. The officer confirmed. There were traces of ice release on the field and a great deal of shattered ice debris. Missing, Yagura thought bitterly. In battlefield parlance, that word had 2 meanings, desertion or being killed, captured. Haku was a clan head and a vested interest of the village. There was no reason for him to defect. Capture alive was unlikely for someone of Haku's caliber. Yagura forced himself to accept the conclusion he dreaded most. Haku was dead. The implications were worse than the loss of a single strong ninja. Haku knew the village's deployments, camp locations, supply routes, operational plans. With him gone, Yagura had to overhaul all arrangements on the east bank, and quickly. Guards outside the tent felt the fury in the air and broke into cold sweat. The man seated inside was a storm barely restrained. Yagura restrained his anger long enough to press for more information. Who killed Haku? Is there any ice release user in Konoha? We didn't see a face, only the ice release techniques, Biwa said, shaking his head. Kuriare nodded in agreement. They had withdrawn too soon. They hadn't seen the decisive moments. Yagura's face darkened. Raiga and the others, have they returned? No. If nothing unexpected happened, they were all killed by Konoha ninja, Yagura stated coldly. You 2 were lucky to escape because of your injuries, he added with clear sarcasm. With such losses and so little identification, only the clue ice release, they could not determine which Konoha powerhouse was responsible. Among the known Konoha figures, none were famous for ice release. Biwa and Kuriarare exchanged a stunned look. They hadn't expected Haku and the others to be killed so completely. What power could have done it? Had Orochimaru intervened? Are there any other notable prodigies on that team? Yagura asked. He assumed if Haku was dead, some of the Konoha prodigies must still be alive. There's also a Uchiha even younger than Obito, very talented, Kuriarare replied, quickly sketching Shisui from memory and handing the drawing to Yagura. The picture confirmed another name. Yagura already had to reconsider. After a few more questions yielded little else, he dismissed the two to recuperate. Yagura set about rearranging the Hidden Mist's forces and sent word back to the village. They could not hold this ground alone. If they wanted to continue to influence events on the East Bank, reinforcements from the Hidden Mist were necessary. If they pulled back now, Konoha, engaged on many fronts, was unlikely to chase them across the sea. That offered an opportunity. Even if the Mist lost skirmishes, they could drag the war out and exhaust Konoha. Yagura decided it was worth committing greater resources. This was a rare chance to press Konoha while it was spread thin. Meanwhile, in the Hokage building's conference room, Konoha's 4 top officials were assembled. Hayate Mugetsu actually killed 4 members of the 7 ninja swordsmen while fighting Haku. Homura Mitokado reported with admiration. I doubt even Minato could have done better. Hiruzen Sarutobi stroked his goatee with a chuckle. He knew Mugetsu's strength but had not expected such rapid, decisive results. If you'd sent Mugetsu to the front earlier, Hiruzen, like I said, the war would have gone much better. Danzo Shimura could not resist. He had long wanted Mugetsu to help earn merit for Orochimaru, but Hiruzen had repeatedly refused. Mugetsu is an excellent root operative I cultivated, Danzo insisted. Mitokado and Utane Koharu looked surprised. Danzo implying credit for Mugetsu's growth was unexpected. Hiruzen bristled. I taught Mugetsu some ninjutsu, but his current strength is due to his own talent and effort, and to the resources I provided. Root only limited his development. He grew faster after leaving Root. Danzo stubbornly maintained his claim. Root had given Mugetsu a foundation, he said, even though he knew Mugetsu's later rise owed more to other factors. Hiruzen let the remark pass without pressing the matter. After all, when Mugetsu left Root, he had already been an elite jonin. They traded a few more barbs and then returned to the matter at hand, whether to publicize Mugetsu's achievements to boost morale or keep them quiet to preserve him as a surprise weapon. The debate continued, their voices low but intense, as they weighed the benefits of Rekko, Nishin against the advantages of secrecy. 434. Meritorious Service Reward. I think this battle should be publicized, like when Minato Namikaze drew with the AB combo, Danzo Shimura said first. It would boost our ninjas' morale and deter enemy villages. Danzo, as the head of Root, had a vested interest in seeing Mu Yue's reputation rise in Konoha. Greater fame would mean greater status and power for Mu Yue, and that reflected well on Danzo himself. It would raise morale, yes, Utatane Koharu countered, but can that really compare to the value of Hayate Mugetsu as a surprise weapon? She leaned toward secrecy. Remember, this time he killed 4 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist and Haku as well. If we can keep a few more such successes covert, Mu Yue can continue functioning as a hidden assassin. That could win us the war. Danzo bristled. Have you been away from the front too long? Such a result isn't achieved by strength alone. His tone was sharper than his disagreement with Hiruzen Sarutobi had been. With Hiruzen, Danzo's barbs sprang from irritation at being restrained. With Utatane, they came from a different place. He understood her. Like him, she was devoted to Konoha and willing to overlook small details for the village's benefit. His bluntness, he hoped, would make his conviction clear. Utatane fell quiet. It had been a while since she'd been on the battlefield. After Hiruzen became Hokage, she'd been elevated to the high command and rarely sent out. Danzo noticed and nodded inwardly. If he could persuade Utane, he effectively dealt with Homura Mitokado too. The two usually moved together. Danzo had little regard for either of them as independent thinkers. Both, he felt, were Hiruzen's supporters, which left him isolated in council meetings. Still, he knew the political reality. Hiruzen was the 3rd Hokage, and Danzo only the assistant. If their positions were reversed, the loyalty would flip. Hiruzen Sarutobi had been silent, and his opinion would decide the matter. He felt Danzo's gaze, but did not speak at once. He took up his pipe, inhaled deeply, and let a thin plume of smoke drift away. The publicity question wasn't the weightiest thing on his mind. He was thinking about the bigger issue. Who in Konoha was best suited to be the next Hokage? Tsunade's popularity was low currently. She hadn't gone to the front. Orochimaru and Jiraiya were neck and neck. Jiraiya's fame had swelled after his victory on the grass country front, but Orochimaru's recent successes on the land of hot water had closed the gap. Hiruzen could formally appoint the next Hokage, but public opinion mattered. A widely disapproved choice could damage the office's prestige. Still, if he believed a popular candidate was unsuited, Hiruzen would favor the right choice over popularity. He found himself thinking of Mu Yue. If the young man had been born 5 or 6 years earlier, Hiruzen would have taken him as a disciple and trained him to be Hokage without hesitation. Mu Yue had the talent, humility, the will of fire, and a teaching instinct reminiscent of Hiruzen's younger self. Compared to his 3 current disciples, Mu Yue was what Hiruzen wished they had been. He sighed and set the pipe down. Concealment won't hold. 2 of the 7 swordsmen escaped. Hidden Mist will learn of this soon enough. In these circumstances, deliberate secrecy is pointless. Let's mobilize our forces and publicize this victory. The feats Mu Yue had accomplished exceeded Hiruzen's expectations. On a previous occasion, when Mu Yue had fought the Sand's hero Yekura, Hiruzen had asked for discretion out of respect for the Sand Village. He would not impose the same restriction this time. The fame Mu Yue already had was far greater than his official rank warranted. Once Hiruzen spoke, Utatane and Homura agreed, and Danzo allowed himself a satisfied smile. Then how do we reward Maito Dai? Promote him to Jonin? Homura Mitakato asked, reading the file. Konoha's Jonin selection was strict. In peacetime, promotions required achievements and examinations. In war there was some leniency, but Maito Dai's case was unusual. He specialized only in taijutsu, with little or no ninjutsu on record. Homura worried a Jonin promotion would violate precedent. He should be special Jonin, Utatane said. He's only skilled in taijutsu, and it's been barely any time since his chuunin promotion. This would be an exceptional advancement. Danzo stayed quiet. Maito Dai's rank was not his concern. Hiruzen leaned forward. Rules are guidelines, but they aren't sacred. Strength in any form, ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, is still strength. Maito Dai fought against 2 of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. That alone merits Jonin. Hiruzen knew Maito Dai well enough to judge his temperament. More important, Dai's intervention had been decisive. Without him, Kakashi and the others could not have repelled the swordsman or held until Mu Yue arrived. Homura and Utatane conceded. Promote him to Jonin, Utatane agreed. Danzo's eyes flashed with slight disdain. He would have argued if Hiruzen had opposed him. What about Kakashi and Metkai? Homura asked. Many of them were only promoted to chuunin in the last 2 years. Some, Shiranui Genma, Ebisu, even Uchiha Shisui, only this year. Hiruzen weighed it and decided, Kakashi Atake, Uchiha Obito, and Metkai shall undergo Jonin assessments when they return to the village. If they pass, they'll be promoted. Rin Nohara will be directly promoted to Special Jonin. The others will remain as they are for now. Ebisu and Genma had been on the sidelines of the fight. Their efforts hadn't matched the requirements for Jonin. Shisui, though strong, lacked sufficient missions. Rin's combat strength might not yet justify a regular Jonin rank, but her medical talent and achievements more than warranted a Special Jonin promotion. Homura and Utatane nodded. Hiruzen had covered all angles. After the meeting, Mu Yue visited his wounded students. All of them had been hurt. The injuries varied in severity. Mu Yue-sensei. Obito waved eagerly when he saw his teacher. Shisui sat up and acknowledged him more reservedly. Kakashi lifted his head slightly and greeted him in that measured tone he always used. Metkai, severely injured, could only weakly turn his head and offer a faint greeting. You're all right? Mu Yue smiled and moved among them, rechecking wounds. He had used transformation jutsu to take on Tsunade's appearance for the examination. His black-framed glasses concealed the change. The kids didn't notice anything amiss. They only felt, gratefully, that under Mu Yue's care, they were healing more completely. Mu Yue-sensei's medical ninjutsu has improved so much, Kakashi thought, surprised. Mu Yue had been treating them for some time, with Rin assisting. Kakashi knew Mu Yue's level well enough to recognize a leap forward. Mu Yue attributed the advancement to studying with Tsunade, but Kakashi believed it also came from Mu Yue's innate talent and the formidable techniques he had developed, the so-called armed color hockey and breathing technique. When can we get back to full? Obito asked. He had shown off against the swordsman alongside Kakashi and wanted to keep improving. You, Shisui, and Rin, 10 days, Mu Yue replied after a moment's thought. Kakashi needs 3 weeks. Guy will need 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Metgai's eyes widened. You can begin rehabilitation after half a month, but don't overdo it, Mu Yue added. Guy released a deep, relieved breath. The idea of being inactive for so long was unbearable for him, and the thought that Kakashi might pull ahead was even worse. The fighting on the front will only intensify from here, Mu Yue said, looking at his students. I plan to send Guy back to Konoha. Does anyone else want to return with him? Hidden Mist had invaded the Fire Country mainland. Orochimaru would surely press the advantage. Mu Yue had carved out a significant opening for Orochimaru, and the battles along the east coast would grow ever fiercer. The next phase of the war was just beginning. Chapter 435, Promotion. The young shinobi exchanged looks, each trying to read what the others were thinking. After a moment of silence, Kakashi spoke up. I'll go back to Konoha too. He needed too much time to recover. If the battle suddenly swung again and he hadn't healed, he could become a liability. Kakashi decided it was better to recuperate in Konoha. A safer, more comfortable environment would speed his recovery so he could return to the field at full strength. Huh? Kakashi, you're going back too? Obito ran his hand through his hair. He wanted to stay, but Kakashi leaving took the point out of remaining. Obito's desire on the battlefield was to compete with Kakashi and surpass him. If Kakashi wasn't there, whom was he competing against? Even if he performed brilliantly, Kakashi could always say he could have done better. I need 3 weeks to recover, Kakashi said coolly. It's easier in Konoha. Recuperating out here limits movement. If given the choice, Kakashi would definitely go home. War was no joke. Lord Mu Yue, is Rin going back? Obito asked after a moment. With Kakashi planning to leave, Obito's interest in staying had dwindled. With his current strength, he couldn't end the war alone. He decided to base his choice on Rin's. If Rin stayed, he'd stay to protect her. If she went, he'd go as well. I'll ask her in a moment, Mu Yue replied. Rin was being treated in a separate tent, so Mu Yue came to the boys first. If Rin goes back too, then I will, Obito said. If she left, there really was no point in him staying. Kakashi glanced at Obito and felt a touch of exasperation at his indecision. I want to stay on the battlefield, Shisui said after thinking it over. He had long been the leader among the disciples, but Obito and the others had gained real combat experience during their internships and were silently surpassing him. Shisui hated losing his edge in their rivalries. He wanted to reclaim his place as Mu Yue's strongest disciple. The war was the perfect proving ground, so he planned to ask Mu Yue for missions after the 10-day recovery period. Besides gaining experience, he also hoped to earn merits in battle to raise his rank. He was still a chuunin. To carry weight at the Uchiha clan meeting, he needed to be higher. The battlefield was where he could make that happen. No problem, Mu Yue agreed. Except for Metkai, whom he insisted return to Konoha, Mu Yue wouldn't stop anyone who wanted to stay. He worried about Guy pushing his body too far. The 8 gates was powerful but dangerous, and Guy combined it with his breathing techniques. Under normal conditions, breathing techniques were harmless, but overexertion in extreme situations could cause lasting damage. Mu Yue went to ask Rin Nohara next. Are Kakashi and the others going back? Rin didn't answer immediately. She first asked about Kakashi and the others' plans. When Mu Yue told her, she thought briefly and replied, I want to return to Konoha. Rin's reasoning was simple. Kakashi needed a long recovery, so he must have been badly hurt. If she went back with him, she could help with his treatment and use the time to sort through recent information and learn from Tsunade. After speaking with the disciples, Mu Yue didn't send them off at once. They needed a few days to regain mobility. Otherwise, someone would have to carry them all the way back. He planned to rest them a little and then use a shadow clone to escort them home. With that settled, Mu Yue turned his attention back to the mission Orochimaru had given him. Inoichi Yamanaka had read the memories of the dead Haku and the 5 former 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, exposing the hidden mist's plans. Even if the mist reacted quickly, they couldn't adjust everything at once. Mu Yue's team had to strike the spots the mist didn't have time to fix. For this operation, Mu Yue didn't rely on his usual perfected methods. He transformed into Haku and used Ice Release. Ice Release, soaring ice dragon. Mu Yue moved, forming a massive ice bird that shot forward and fro, any hidden mist ninja in its path. This was not Mu Yue's own ice release at his mastery level. He was using Haku's jutsu at Haku's master level proficiency. Still, Mu Yue had far more chakra than Haku, so even the same technique hit harder when he used it. Ice release, freezing ray. For those who evaded the ice bird, Mu Yue followed up with a freezing beam. The ambushed mist shinobi were stunned. Bloodline traits weren't exclusive to one village. Tsunagakure and Kumogakure both had magnet release users, but they'd never heard of an ice release user outside the mist. And one this powerful? Some watched their comrades freeze in a panic and whispered, "How is this ice release even stronger than Lord Haku's?" In truth, their observation wasn't wrong. Mu Yue's greater chakra allowed him to wield nature transformation more forcefully. Ice release was brutally effective against weaker foes, and Mu Yue quickly neutralized all the mist ninja in his sector. When he moved on, the hidden mist forces retreated fast. "Yagura Karatachi, huh? A respectable opponent," Orochimaru murmured, tallying the battle results. Yagura Karatachi had reacted quickly, but the operation had still struck at the mist's forces on the Land of Fire's east coast. If things continued without interference, Yagura Karatachi would likely be overwhelmed. Orochimaru saw victory as only a matter of time. The other jonin in the command tent looked pleased. A win here meant benefits for them as well. From now on, Lord Mu Yue will serve as deputy commander of the unit, Orochimaru announced as the meeting wound down. The Konoha leadership had decided to name Mu Yue a deputy commander. This didn't replace Nara Shikaku's deputy slot. Both would serve as deputies. Konoha often had one commander and multiple deputies. "Jonin Mutsuki, congratulations," a fellow jonin said. Though unit command was a temporary wartime role, it carried prestige. Mu Yue smiled modestly. In his view, the title wasn't that important. It simply meant he wouldn't be returning to Konoha anytime soon. At least, not until the hidden mist had been driven back. Before this, Mu Yue had no official position. His place in Orochimaru's small council had been earned on merit rather than rank. He suspected two reasons for the promotion: his contributions on the field and a shift in Hiruzen Sarutobi's thinking. Hiruzen might once have planned to recall him, but now expected him to help finish the mist problem. Orochimaru walked alongside Mu Yue near the camp, but this time he spoke of rewards from the Konoha leadership. If your 3 disciples pass the assessment, they can become the youngest jonin in Konoha's history, Orochimaru said with a faint smile. Konoha's standards for jonin were strict. No one had ever been promoted at 10, no matter how talented. Some had the strength but lacked achievements, others met the technical requirements but failed in other areas. Mu Yue's eyes flickered. He wondered what rewards would follow if his disciples were promoted. "Based on my understanding of the assessment, it shouldn't be difficult for your 3 disciples, Lord Mu Yue, to pass," Orochimaru added, assuming Mu Yue might worry. Obito and Kakashi were strong enough to hold off one of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Metkai, when he unleashed himself, could stand against 3. Passing the test seemed almost certain. "Lord Orochimaru, you think too highly of them," Mu Yue said with a smile, shaking his head. He wasn't worried about their strength, but jonin promotion wasn't based on power alone. In other parts of the assessment, Obito and Metkai might not surpass experienced chuunin. The one who could reliably pass all the criteria, Mu Yue thought, was Kakashi, a true all-arounder, skilled at everything, if only a bit lacking in relentless fighting spirit. 436. The Thunder Escape Sword Technique is not inferior to the Golden Skyline. When Mu Yue announced the rewards, the students' faces showed a mix of emotions. Under Mu Yue's comprehensive care, they had all recovered enough to walk around. Even the most seriously injured, Metkai, could get out of bed and move. They were taking a stroll together to help digestion. "That means I'm going to be a jonin." Obito couldn't help but leap up with excitement. Apart from the Hokage, jonin was the highest ninja rank in Konoha, one step closer to the top. The ninja school teachers were only chuunin, so becoming a jonin would be a clear sign he had surpassed them. Obito pictured the stunned expressions of those instructors who had once looked down on him. Their jaws would drop. He'd been treated with respect at the end of school, but too often he'd been an object of scorn. The memory of being the dropout Uchiha still stung. He didn't want revenge, he just wanted to treasure the present, and he was grateful to Mu Yue for changing his life. Kakashi listened impassively. Rank didn't interest him much. The only use he saw in it was another thing to tease Obito about once they were both jonin. Still, promotion made sense. Kakashi had become a chuunin at 6, and with his mission record it was reasonable for him to be promoted. He didn't make a fuss. Jonin, huh? That's a solid step toward my goal. Metkai flashed an enthusiastic grin. His father, Mido Dai's hope for him had always been greatness. In Konoha, the standards for jonin were high. Any Konoha jonin could be called excellent. Shisui, hearing that Kakashi and the others might become jonin too, felt more determined to stay on the battlefield and collect achievements. To be promoted, he needed merits. Time flies, Rin said with a smile. Feels like we just graduated yesterday, and now we're already on our way to becoming jonin, independent ninja. She had been appointed a special jonin directly and was content with the arrangement. She knew her own limits. Her power wasn't enough to be a normal jonin, and she likely wouldn't pass a full jonin assessment. She was stronger than most chuunin, but slightly weaker than a true jonin, though under Tsunade's guidance, her medical ninjutsu rivaled that of a medical jonin. That's because it hasn't even been 2 years since graduation, Obito snapped. They'd graduated at 9, not even 2 years had passed. It proves we're exceptional. I've never heard of anyone becoming a jonin less than 2 years after graduation. He beamed with pride, then hurried to ask Mu Yue. Mu Yue-sensei, why is Rin made a special jonin directly instead of taking the jonin exam with us? He worried his earlier boasting might make Rin uncomfortable. Mu Yue answered succinctly, the arrangement is based on your battlefield performance and your dossiers. It was a considered decision for Rin. Obito scratched his head, still not pleased with the explanation. Kakashi gave him a flat look. Don't think Rin's promotion is worse, Kakashi said. You might not even pass the assessment, then Rin's rank will be higher than yours. Kakashi was being merciful. In his view, Obito wouldn't just possibly fail. He'd almost certainly fail the theoretical portions of a jonin assessment. Strength was only one component. Obito's gap in theoretical knowledge was significant. Only Mu Yue's intervention could save him, and Mu Yue was needed on the battlefield. How is that possible? Kakashi, don't act like you'll always win just because you did well in one chuunin exam. I'll pass the jonin test and become a jonin easily, Obito said dismissively. He remembered topping the ninja school graduation and reaching the chuunin exam's final 4. If not for Kakashi, he might have taken first place. He set a private goal, do better than Kakashi in the jonin assessment. Kakashi smiled without revealing the harsh truth. Obito wouldn't be happy for long. After the announcements, Mu Yue outlined their training plans. Kakashi, when you return to Konoha, set aside other training and concentrate on lightning release chakra nature transformation and swordsmanship, he instructed. He explained why. The one thought cut looked like a simple swing, but it contained extremely complex lightning release chakra transformation and profound swordsmanship. It wasn't just an ultimate lightning release sword move, it was the ultimate of ultimates. Mu Yue couldn't even teach Kakashi the technique yet. Current mastery levels were too low. First, Kakashi had to strengthen both the lightning release nature and his swordsmanship. Even if Kakashi's chakra might only allow one use of one thought cut, that one cut could produce miracles in many situations. The potential ceiling of the technique was terrifying. Mu Yue, himself, also needed to advance his swordsmanship. Much of his blade skill came from system rewards tied to Kakashi's life missions, and his own mastery was only average. He couldn't take his ideas for one thought cut to their next stage because his sword experience was insufficient. The technique's origin seemed to point a path from thoughtless one thought cut to dream true speak, discarding thoughtlessness and carrying dreams. Kakashi's eyes brightened. When Mu Yue set such specific requirements, it usually meant he would be teaching something new and powerful. I'll teach you a lightning release sword technique that's no worse than Golden Skyline, Mu Yue said to spur Kakashi's training. Kakashi's gaze sharpened. A lightning release blade move at least on par with Metgai's Golden Skyline? He had to work harder. Thunderclap Flash was fast and strong, but Kakashi always felt it lacked what Guy's Golden Skyline had. Now Mu Yue promised something stronger. Kakashi sighed inwardly at Mu Yue's talent. At only 20, Mu Yue had developed numerous advanced jutsu and taijutsu, even forbidden-like inverse techniques such as breathing technique. Even the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, who created many jutsu, hadn't done so much at that age. Mu Yue should have still been accumulating knowledge, yet his output was extraordinary. Obito, who had taken enough punishment from Golden Skyline, couldn't sit still. "Is there a fire release jutsu that matches Golden Skyline?" he blurted. "No," Mu Yue said, shaking his head. Fire release techniques at that caliber were unheard of in the ninja world. Mu Yue's own fire release moves were possible because of his broad knowledge of taijutsu and fire release. But to develop a fire release equal to Golden Skyline would require him to drop everything else and focus solely on fire release, an unlikely scenario. Mu Yue rated that chance even slimmer than Obito suddenly mastering the ancient Kusanagi-style martial arts. Obito's face fell. Shisui felt a strange disappointment too. Mu Yue's fire release was powerful, but nothing as dazzling or unique as Golden Skyline. Breathing technique was widely practiced and thus accessible. Golden Skyline remained the province of Metkai alone. "My best friend," Guy laughed excitedly. "I look forward to the clash when your lightning-release swordsmanship meets my Golden Skyline." He could hardly wait for the youthful spectacle. Rin, meanwhile, kept her resolve quietly. She had to train harder. In most areas, she trailed behind. Advanced techniques were out of reach because her ninja qualities weren't enough. For example, Mu Yue's self-improved super-advanced water release, super-exploding water shockwave, had once wiped out dozens of snow ninja easily. But to learn that, one needed at least 1,500 proficiency in water breathing, mastery of water chakra nature, and a large chakra reserve. Rin met none of those requirements, so she could not hope to learn it yet. They walked on, each of them carrying the same promise of growth, some with confidence, some with doubt, but all ready to train toward what lay ahead. Chapter 437, Famous, Finally Here. Obito grumbled as they passed under Konoha's massive gate. Even though this trip was shorter than our previous missions overseas, it felt longer on the road. Normally, they would have used the journey as training and rushed along, but their injuries were too severe this time. They couldn't travel at full speed, so their pace had been slow. Kakashi looked at the gate and felt a weight lift from his chest. He might not have used the most physical effort on the battlefield, but he had expended the most mental energy. As vice captain, he'd felt responsible for bringing everyone back safely, and every decision had been made with care. Mentally exhausting work. "Guy, do you want to go home first, or come straight to the hospital with me?" Kakashi asked Metkai after they entered the village. Mu Yue had sent a shadow clone to escort them, but its chakra was limited. If it performed medical ninjutsu on Guy, it wouldn't be able to sustain itself, so Guy still needed treatment at Konoha Hospital. Kakashi, too, would need to be hospitalized for about a week. "Straight to the hospital. My dad's still on the battlefield and no one's home," Guy replied quickly. Kakashi nodded. "Let's all go together. Even if you don't need a long stay, you should at least get a checkup," Rin said, looking at Obito. When Obito saw the gentle look in Rin's eyes, he nodded without thinking. Rin clapped softly, her face brightening. "Great! We all thought the same thing." Obito had meant to go home first to tell his grandmother he was safe, but he kept silent when he saw Rin's smile. A hospital visit wouldn't take long anyway. The four of them went to Konoha Hospital together. "Oh, are you Kakashi Hatake, the Konoha Little White Fang?" The nurse handling admission glanced from Kakashi's face to the newspaper beside him and seemed surprised. Kakashi's expression turned puzzled. What on earth was Konoha Little White Fang? It sounded ridiculous. "That's hilarious. What kind of title is Konoha Little White Fang? Is it because you're not tall enough, Kakashi?" Obito burst out laughing. "I am Kakashi Hatake, but I'm not the Konoha Little White Fang," Kakashi said, ignoring Obito's joke, and answered the nurse calmly. Hearing Obito's voice, the nurse realized that the Uchiha Obito, Maido Guy, and Rin Nohara mentioned in the report were here too. "You must have just returned from the front," he said, smiling. "Your deeds on the battlefield are in the Leaf newspaper and have spread across Konoha. Everyone says you, Kakashi, could be the next Konoha White Fang." If Mu Yue was the focus of the latest Leaf newspaper, Kakashi had become a notable supporting figure. With his father's identity adding interest, talk about him had even eclipsed Guy, second only to Mu Yue. The original Konoha Whitefang had died by suicide after a failed mission, a stain on his legacy, but he had still been a formidable figure. Konoha Little Whitefang wasn't meant as sarcasm so much as an optimistic hope for Kakashi's future. He was talented after all, and at 10 had helped pin down Suikazan Fuguki. Even if it wasn't a solo kill, it was an impressive feat. "Your taste in titles is poor," Kakashi said bluntly. He could tell the nurse meant no harm, but he didn't like the label. Kakashi had let go of much of his past and accepted his father's death, but that didn't mean he wanted to be called someone else's successor. If he had a goal, it was to surpass the White Fang as Kakashi Hatake, not to be the next anyone. The nurse didn't seem embarrassed. Indeed, Lord White Fang didn't have such achievements at 10. Konoha Little White Fang might be unsuitable, he agreed. Then he asked, "By the way, is Lord Mu Yue back, too?" As soon as the latest Leaf newspaper was released, Mu Yue had become the most talked-about ninja in Konoha and across the Land of Fire, even outshining Orochimaru and Jiraiya in public interest. While Mu Yue wasn't unknown, he hadn't been viewed as a strong public figure like the Yellow Flash. This coverage change, that. "We're back, but Mu Yue isn't. Please finish the paperwork quickly," Kakashi reminded him. There was a limit to chatting on the job. Startled, the nurse snapped back to business and hurried through the hospitalization procedures for Guy and Kakashi. When he finished, Kakashi held out a hand. "Give me the newspaper as compensation for your little distraction," he said dryly. "Please, don't report this." The nurse, who had already finished reading the paper, handed it over. A newspaper wasn't worth much, and giving it away seemed fine. Let me see," Obito leaned in as soon as Kakashi had the paper, eyes bright with curiosity. Words like Flame Demon, Fire God, or Konoha's Fiery Tiger flashed through his mind. Kakashi pushed Obito's head away, exasperated. "How would the village's official newspaper staff give you a title? Titles don't just appear in the Leaf unless they're widely recognized. My Little White Fang label wasn't from the Leaf, just rumors." "So how did you get a title at all?" Obito asked, puzzled. "First, I haven't accepted it. Second, a title doesn't mean the village officially gave it," Kakashi explained. He sat on the bed and opened the paper. The others clustered around, curious how the fierce battle would be described. "Defending the homeland, East Bank Battlefield achieves unprecedented victory. Hidden Mist forces suffer heavy losses." Kakashi read aloud from the bold headline. The issue focused on the battle. The cruel Hidden Mist, exploiting weaknesses along the East Coast defense line, invaded the Land of Fire. Our forces were initially at a disadvantage, but under the troop commander Orochimaru, the situation improved and turned in our favor. Konoha's excellent jonin, Hayate Mugetsu, played an indispensable role. Like a sharp blade, he cut down many Hidden Mist powerhouses and secured crucial intelligence. The front pages were mostly about Mu Yue and Orochimaru, with battlefield photos. Kakashi, who often read the Leaf, wasn't surprised. The paper always prioritized big names and famous figures first. Other participants were mentioned later. "Where are our names? Mu Yue is one thing, but why's Orochimaru mentioned so much?" Obito complained. Orochimaru hadn't been directly involved in the skirmish as Obito saw it. Why say under Orochimaru's leadership? He hadn't even spoken to him. Kakashi glanced at the door, then nodded subtly to Guy to close it. The ward had only 2 beds, and they didn't want anyone outside overhearing. "Orochimaru is one of the legendary Sannin and the commander of the forces on the East Bank battlefield," Kakashi said, shaking his head. "It's best not to say things like that next time." Kakashi knew the reason. As battlefield commander, Orochimaru's name would inevitably be used to describe the campaign. Even if they'd earned merit, the chain of command couldn't be bypassed. He could have explained, but Obito probably wouldn't understand, so he just told him to be careful. Disrespecting a senior could get him in trouble. "Jiraiya's another Sannin, and he didn't cause so much trouble," Obito replied, still puzzled. He'd even complained about Jiraiya openly on the grass ninja battlefield before. "If I tell you not to say it, then don't say it. Consider it an order from your vice captain," Kakashi said after a moment. "We're not on a mission, so your vice captain status doesn't apply," Obito protested. "If you don't want to be assigned menial tasks next time, you'd better listen to me," Kakashi threatened plainly. Kakashi, you'll regret this. Obito's face darkened. He knew Kakashi could carry out the threat. The team's combat capability had been unevenly distributed, but substantial. I'm the vice captain, Kakashi said simply. Power made enforcement easier. Obito fell quiet and returned to the newspaper. Only in the lower half did they find a report about themselves. The paper described Kakashi's team as young but exceptionally talented ninjas with an unshakable will of fire. Even when facing powerful opponents like the Seven Ninja S, Wordsmen of the Mist, they hadn't abandoned their comrades and had fought to protect the village. In Mu Yue's absence, they'd teamed up with Maito Dai to repel the Seven Ninja Swordsmen and had even killed Suikazan Fuguki on the spot. The team's members were all mentioned, though the length of each description varied. Guy had the most, followed by Obito and Kakashi for the kill of Suikazan Fuguki, then Shisui. Rin Nohara was mentioned less, and Ebisu and Shiranui Genma were only named. Now no one should look down on my dad anymore, Guy said, swelling with pride as he read his father's description. Maito Dai's mention wasn't much shorter than his own. That's too brief. The mission's details were skimmed over, Obito muttered, not entirely satisfied with his own write-up. If you'd been the one who killed Haku and 4 members of the 7 ninja swordsmen, your section would have been longer, Kakashi said flatly. A newspaper only had so much space. For their status, getting any coverage at all was a small miracle. One day I'll make sure the best spot in the Leaf newspaper is about me, Obito declared. He didn't doubt that becoming Hokage and ending the war would put him on the front page. I hope your plan isn't to become a Leaf newspaper writer and secretly change the content, Kakashi said, folding the paper away. Rin covered her mouth and laughed. Don't underestimate Obito. Even he wouldn't do something like that. Obito felt strange at their teasing. I'm not daydreaming. Maybe, he muttered. You're too easy to read, Kakashi said bluntly as he lay back on the bed. Obito scratched his head. Kakashi seemed to know what he was thinking because Obito's thoughts were written across his face. It was hard to hide them. Eventually, feeling embarrassed, Obito bolted from the hospital as if in a panic. If only there really were a mind-reading ninjutsu, he thought on his way home. People were hard to predict, especially girls. If he could read Rin's mind, he'd know how to make her happy every day. Grandma, I'm home, he shouted when he arrived. His grandmother shuffled to the doorway and smiled when she saw him. You must be hungry. Grandma will make you something. I am a little, Obito admitted, accepting her kindness. Mu Yue's cooking had been good, but nothing beat his grandmother's. Our Obito has done well. The clan head even came by with a reward yesterday, saying you're an outstanding Uchiha, his grandmother said, pride in her voice. She'd raised him alone, and, though she hadn't read the newspaper, knew he'd done something notable. The clan head said if you came back, you should go see him. Chapter 438, Well-Known Strongman. What does General Fugaku want with me? Obito stretched out in a chair and asked casually. He didn't know Uchiha Fugaku very well. He'd had more contact with Uchiha Yashiro. Even so, Obito didn't have a great opinion of Yashiro either. He kept trying to recruit him into the police force. It isn't anything bad, Grandma replied. It seems he wants to give you some sort of reward. Then I'll go after I finish eating. The word reward piqued Obito's interest. Joining the police force was out of the question, but he certainly wouldn't refuse a reward, especially from the Uchiha, who still possessed a number of advanced fire release techniques. Is this enough to eat? Grandma set the dishes on the table and looked at him with fond eyes. Enough! Enough! I may not even finish it all, Obito replied quickly, afraid she'd add more. Grandma's love was the kind that never thought you had eaten enough. If Obito hadn't strengthened his body through the breathing technique, he might indeed have struggled to eat so much. After the meal, Obito washed the dishes without being asked, and then headed to Uchiha Fugaku's house. He forgot one thing. When not on missions, he had time to come and go, but Fugaku, as the police force captain, was usually working. Obito arrived early and didn't find Fugaku. Instead, he met Uchiha Mikoto and Uchiha Itachi. Obito, are you here to play with Itachi? Mikoto asked. She didn't know why Obito had come. My grandma said General Fugaku wanted to see me, Obito answered. He should still be at the police force. He won't be back for about half an hour. Why don't you sit and wait? I'll make you some tea. Makoto glanced at the time. Half an hour was worth waiting for if there was a reward involved. With nothing better to do, Obito used the time to school Itachi a little. He found Itachi sitting in the yard, staring into space. Itachi, you must grow up to be a good person, not a bad one, Obito said suddenly. Itachi looked at him with puzzled eyes. What is a good person, and why must I be one? Obito scratched his head, a little flummoxed. A good person helps others a lot. A bad person bullies others. People don't like bad people, so you should be a good person. So, helping Grandma across the street is being good, and someone who snatches Grandma's lollipop is bad? Itachi asked, thoughtful. You could say that, Obito nodded confidently. After all, he often helped the elderly. He certainly considered himself a good person. Itachi combined the scenarios in his head. But what if someone helps Grandma across the road and then snatches her lollipop? Is that person good or bad? Obito ran his hands through his hair and froze. If he said the person was good, they still stole the lollipop. If he said they were bad, they'd helped Grandma across. Ahem, that question doesn't count. Most people wouldn't do that, he blurted, then coughed and tried to dismiss it. He really didn't know how to answer. Itachi watched him quietly, clearly curious for an explanation. Obito wouldn't have minded sounding wise to his junior clan member, but he genuinely had no answer, so an awkward silence fell, until Uchiha Fugaku came back early and broke it. Obito, did you just return from a mission today? Fugaku greeted with a smile. Yes, everyone was injured on the last mission, so Mu Yue-sensei told us to come back to Konoha to recuperate for a while, Obito said gratefully. After such a fierce battle, you must rest if you're hurt. Your body is what's most important, Fugaku said with concern. This time, Obito and Shisui had brought great honor to the Uchiha, and their reputations as prodigies spread through Konoha. I'm fine. Mostly my teammates were worse off, Obito answered honestly. That's good. Fugaku led Obito into the living room. Makoto, get the red scroll from my room, please, he instructed. When Makoto returned with the scroll, Fugaku smiled at Obito. You have excellent aptitude in fire release. Besides your own hard work, studying the cultivation sciences of our predecessors will serve you well. I have some fire release cultivation techniques from past Uchiha clan heads. Take them home and study them. Techniques to cultivate? Obito felt a little disappointed. He'd hoped for advanced fire release jutsu. He wasn't fond of reading books. Cultivation manuals would be harder for him to make progress with than learning straightforward jutsu. Fugaku noticed his expression and asked, Is there any fire release jutsu you'd like to learn? Given Obito's performance, Fugaku genuinely wanted to support his growth. He truly saw the hope of the Uchiha revival in Obito. For an Uchiha to become Hokage was extraordinarily difficult. He needed strength, of course, but also lineage and prestige. Obito had the raw talent to rival the three Sannin, and his teachers, Minato Namikaze and Hayate Mugetsu, gave him a direct link to Hokage lineage. As a famous young chuunin, his prestige was already high. All three pillars were shaping up for Obito, which was why Fugaku was so optimistic. I want to learn all the advanced fire release jutsu, Obito said with a laugh. He could never have too many techniques. Then come by again tomorrow night. I'll see if there are any advanced fire release techniques in the clan suitable for you, Fugaku replied after a moment's thought. He wasn't reluctant to part with techniques so much as worried Obito might bite off more than he could chew. Hey, then I'll trouble you, General Fugaku. Obito scratched his head and smiled in thanks as Fugaku handed over the red scroll Makoto had brought. Despite his lack of interest in reading, since it was free, Obito accepted the scroll happily. After he got what he came for, he didn't stay long. He dreaded Itachi asking that impossible question again. As he headed out, Fugaku patted his son on the head. Itachi, you should learn from Obito, Fugaku said with an expectant tone. Besides Obito, Shisui's performance had been outstanding. If his son Itachi could reach their level, this would truly be a great era for the Uchiha. Learn from Obito, Itachi repeated, thinking back on their earlier conversation. If he had a choice, he'd prefer to learn from Shisui. Obito didn't seem particularly clever. Iwagakure, Tsuchikage's office. First, there was the Yellow Flash, who could fight the AB combo to a draw, And now there's Hayate Mugetsu, who defeated the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist and killed Haku. Konoha has an enviable number of geniuses, Onoki said, setting the papers down with a grave expression. Iwagakure had recovered well. Its ninja forces had grown, and it could now field over 10,000 soldiers. But Onoki, as third Tsuchikage, knew of a deeper danger, a shortage of top-tier strongmen. Among the younger generation, only Kitsuchi showed anything like the promise he wanted. No one else looked capable of reaching the heights required to awe the ninja world. The 5 great shinobi villages were great precisely because they had both awe-inspiring strongmen and countless skilled chuunin and jonin. If Iwagakure stayed this way for 20 years, its top combat power would be badly diminished. Onoki envied Konoha, which had produced geniuses continuously despite having fewer ninja. We need to find a way to weaken Konoha first. Even if we have an opportunity with Kumogakure, we must put it aside for now, he decided. Ninja Master Sosuke, since their ideal is peace, if we can find a way to create conflict between Konoha and the Land of Rain, we might set the shinobi sect against Konoha. Onoki had read Kitsuchi's report and thought of making enemies for Konoha. The shinobi sect's overall power was limited, but its few strongmen were formidable. Ninja Master Sosuke, who had defeated Hanzo, was a genuine top-tier warrior. His ability might rival Hiruzen Sarutobi and the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Kakuzu, long active in the black market, was not to be underestimated either. And although Nagato was unknown in the wider ninja world, Kitsuchi's report said Nagato was no ordinary shinobi, perhaps as strong as Kakuzu, and with bizarre methods. With these 3, Onoki felt the shinobi sect could seriously trouble Konoha, Hidden Sand Village. After completing her mission, Yakura pulled up the latest intelligence on the ninja world. Konoha's great victory. Hayate Mugetsu slays Haku, Raiga Kurosuke. Seeing those names, a figure immediately formed in her mind. It makes sense. A few months earlier, Yakura had been defeated by Mu Yue in a brief clash. Though their intelligence had been uneven, Mu Yue's finish had been quick. If he had wanted to kill her, he could have. She'd had a sense then that Mu Yue would soon become famous. Now he had. Mu Yue had turned into a rising star on the battlefield. Hidden Mist took such a heavy loss to Konoha, they probably won't pick at Hidden Sand for a while, Yakura thought. Hidden Mist had shown interest in a destabilized Hidden Sand, and Yakura had been wary. Hidden Sand had suffered terribly after the 3rd Kazakage's disappearance. Internal strife had sapped vital strength, and Kumogakure had taken advantage. Even Yakura, a hero of the village, felt Hidden Sand was the weakest of the 5 great shinobi villages at the moment. If there hadn't been that internal war over the Kazakage succession, Hidden Sand wouldn't have fallen so far, she thought, resenting those who had plunged the village into strife. Hidden Cloud Village. The 3rd Raikage convened his advisors after seeing Mu Yue's achievements and the results of Konoha's campaign on the East Coast. Word of the extraordinary young strongman from Konoha spread quickly. Small villages and forces across the ninja world learned that a new, powerful figure, Hayate Mugetsu, had appeared. Konoha's fighters were buoyed by the news, confident of victory. Rival villages poured effort into uncovering Mu Yue's abilities. Konoha had publicized his achievements, but not the specifics, so most only knew he was powerful. Hidden Mist, though, who had fought Mu Yue directly, had a lot of detailed intelligence. They knew he used Ice Release, Fire and Wind combination techniques, and Flying Thunder God. That combination made him dangerous. He could bombard from a distance with combination jutsu and instantly strike to kill with Flying Thunder God. Unsurprisingly, Hidden Mist was happy to sell copies of their reports. Note, author's personal aside removed. Land of Water. Hidden Mist Village. Mizukage's conference room. The 3rd Mizukage's usual gentle, inscrutable smile was gone. In its place was a cold, stern expression. The 5-7 swordsmen of the Mist and Haku, we lost so much strength, and we couldn't even kill one Konoha prodigy. Have I been too lenient with Yagura? How could such a major operational failure happen? He slammed the report down on the conference table. The room fell silent. The Hidden Mist forces on the East Coast had indeed suffered heavy losses, and no one wanted to speak up for Yagura Karatachi, while the Mizukage was visibly furious. After a long, tense pause, the 3rd Mizukage scanned the senior officials seated around the table. Genshi, seated to the Mizukage's right, finally spoke. Yagura did make mistakes, but we can't put this loss entirely on him. Nobody expected Konoha to be hiding someone who had mastered the Flying Thunder God technique. Both Konoha and Hayate Mugetsu hid him very well, Genshi sighed. It made no sense in theory. Bloodline limit abilities are rare and usually attract attention. Someone with the Ice Release Kekkei Genkai or the Flying Thunder God should have been known, yet Mu Yue had remained obscure. Even after Haku's death, Mu Yue not only removed important bodies, but also destroyed other corpses, leaving Hidden Mist with nothing to analyze. Yagura did try to contain the situation. If he hadn't adjusted when he did, our casualties could have been far worse. Genshi emphasized that the fault lay as much with Konoha's cunning as with any Mist commander. The third Mizukage's face softened a fraction, though a cold edge remained. Genshi inwardly noted that the rebuke of Yagura was probably performative, necessary theater for leadership, and stepped in to balance things. He respected Yagura, but he had no intention of clashing with the Mizukage over him. He didn't want internal disputes to spill into the decision over the next Mizukage. Yagura wants the village to send reinforcements and continue to wear down Konoha, the Mizukage said, looking around the room. What do you think? The third Mizukage leaned toward Yagura's strategy of protracted attrition, but couldn't outright order it after a recent defeat without seeming overbearing. It could work, the Hidden Mist Anbu leader said after a moment. The more aggressive Konoha appears, the more wary the other villages will be. With such a strong Konoha, the other villages will be cautious. Even if they fight among themselves, they'll be mindful of Konoha. This is a chance for Hidden Mist to make a name for itself. A high-ranking official with bandages covering his lower face spoke in a low voice. Continuing the campaign is acceptable, but given our current losses, the only way to decisively beat Konoha might be to deploy a Jinchuriki as a trump card. The Mizukage fell silent as he weighed that. Hidden Mist had two-tailed beasts, the Three Tails and the Six Tails, and neither Jinchuriki was in good shape, particularly the Three Tails. Elsewhere, away from the tension of the council, Mu Yue was doing his own accounting. A progress notification blinked across his internal panel. Disciple, Uchiha Obito, strength increased, reputation up, battlefield experience gained, chance of becoming Hokage has risen slightly, progress reward obtained, chakra 1500, fire release skill extraction scroll, S, fire release ninjutsu mastery scroll. Fire release ninjutsu mastery scroll can raise any fire release technique you already know to mastery level. If the technique is already at mastery, the scroll converts to plus 3,000 proficiency points. Mu Yue let the information settle and opened Obito's life mission panel. Name, Uchiha Obito Life Mission. It's not those who become Hokage who are recognized by everyone, but those who are recognized by everyone who can become Hokage. Main goal, become the Hokage of Konoha. Mission progress. 31%. Obito's life mission progress had nudged ahead again. After the recent skirmish, Obito still led among Mu Yue's disciples by a couple of percentage points, ahead of Metkai. Obito had triggered 3 life mission rewards. Shisui hadn't triggered a single one yet. Name, Uchiha Shisui Life Mission, Uchiha and Konoha. Main goal, eliminate the conflict between the Uchiha clan and Konoha, integrating the Uchiha into Konoha. Mission progress, 3%. Mu Yue knew why. Obito's mission advanced through ordinary growth, training, missions, proving himself. A Hokage lineage disciple naturally accumulates progress as he distinguishes himself. Shisui's mission required political influence within the Uchiha, something a child of under 10 couldn't realistically do. Mu Yue expected Shisui's progress to accelerate once he made a name for himself on the battlefield. In their world, strength speaks louder than age or rank. Closing the mission windows, Mu Yue turned to the rewards from Obito's progress. The chakra was welcome. The S-rank Fire Release Extraction Scroll was more focused than the generic reward he'd seen before, guaranteed to draw a Fire Release-related skill. The Mastery Scroll, limited to Fire Release, was flexible, useful if he wanted to perfect a technique. He had no Fire Release technique he urgently wanted to perfect, so he set the Mastery Scroll aside and activated the Extraction Scroll. Fire Release Skill Extraction Scroll, S consumed. Obtained skill, Great Sunny Day. A rush of related memories and skill data flooded Mu Yue. He instantly gained deep proficiency in a fire-release ninjutsu called Great Sunny Day. The name and mechanics triggered an odd recognition, like something from a game he remembered. Great Sunny Day altered the battlefield's weather for a short duration. Fire techniques strengthened, water techniques weakened. Mu Yue left the Konoha camp by using Flying Thunder God and found an uninhabited clearing to test the new skill. Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique. He concentrated chakra in his throat and expelled a massive fireball that smashed into the ground, carving a scorched crater. Then he gathered chakra in his palm. A dazzling orb of light formed and he flung it into the sky. Great Sunny Day. Sunlight in a 50-meter radius intensified instantly. The air heated. The heat on Mu Yue's skin became noticeably stronger. He repeated the great fireball with the same chakra input. The explosion scorched a larger crater than before. Mu Yue used body flicker to step beyond the Great Sunny Day's radius. The localized sunlight remained intensified where he'd cast it. The effect lingered. Water Dragon Bullet Technique. He formed seals outside the Great Sunny Day area and summoned a torrent of water that coalesced into a raging water dragon, smashing through trees. When Mu Yue stepped back into the Great Sunny Day zone and tried the same water release, he felt how much harder it was to bring the jutsu up to the same power. Within the Sunny Zone, water techniques required noticeably more chakra to match their normal strength. The basic pattern matched the game-like description, but Mu Yue noted an important difference. Real-world ninjutsu wasn't locked to rigid multipliers. The effect of Great Sunny Day scaled with the caster's proficiency and the chakra invested. A higher mastery would enlarge the area, strengthen the fire boost, and further weaken water techniques. He experimented with range and chakra investment. The ratio of chakra spent to firepower gain was not as efficient as his flame-breathing chakra mode. If it's one-on-one and the opponent isn't a water user, flame-breathing is better, Mu Yue calculated. If they're a water-release opponent, Great Sunny Day is superior. Flame-breathing chakra mode was versatile, good for many situations, while Great Sunny Day was specialized but could be devastating at scale. Mu Yue considered combining them, cast Great Sunny Day over a battlefield, then enter flame-breathing to capitalize on the boost. It would be effective, but prohibitively chakra-intensive. Earlier testing had consumed 40,000 chakra to sustain Great Sunny Day over a 200-meter radius for 5 minutes. That very scale was what made the skill valuable in warfare. A single user buff would be expensive and perhaps wasteful, but if he could buff a unit, if 100 fire-release ninja all benefited, the combined effect would eclipse the value of flame-breathing alone. Drawing Great Sunny Day here, on the hidden mist front, where many enemies relied on water release, felt almost providential. Mu Yue smiled at the thought. S-rank extraction scrolls were worth every gamble. If word got out that such a battlefield buff existed, Hidden Mist would probably hunt him down, while Konoha might form a specialized fire release unit to keep him close. Either result would be trouble, but the tactical value was undeniable. 440. The Inhumane Uchiha. By the time Shisui recovered from his injuries, Obito and his team had already returned to Konoha. Mu Yue assigned Shisui to a new squad. Shisui accepted without argument. With his current strength, he wasn't ready to act alone on the battlefield. You must be Uchiha Shisui, joining our squad. I'm Takagi Shinji, squad captain. I'm a special jonin and I specialize in fire release, Takagi Shinji said as Shisui arrived. Even though Shisui was only a temporary addition, introductions were necessary. Not as ritual, but so everyone knew each other's basic skills and wouldn't get in each other's way in combat. When Takagi Shinji's disciples saw the name Uchiha Shisui, they looked him over with curiosity. The name had been on everyone's lips lately. Even the rear lines of Konoha knew of Kakashi and his team's feats. Those fighting up front, like these three, knew even more. Word of Mu Yue's strength and the genius of Kakashi's team had spread across the whole battlefield. He's so small, really 8 years old. How could someone that age have enough strength to fight the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist? One murmured. Maybe the swordsmen aren't as strong as they were rumored to be. This Uchiha doesn't look that impressive, another whispered. Shisui gave no outward reaction to the whispers. Calm and quiet, he introduced himself after Takagi finished. I am Uchiha Shisui. I am a chuunin. I specialize in fire release and genjutsu. Takagi Shinji nodded, then had his 3 disciples introduce themselves. I'm Kobayashi Kenji, chuunin, wind release. I'm Uesugi Toru, chuunin, fire release. I'm Miyashita Yuki, chuunin. I know basic medical ninjutsu. To arrange tactics for missions, I need to see your abilities in a practice fight. But we have a mission soon, so stop before anyone gets seriously hurt, Takagi Shinji decided. Normally, he would have his disciples test a newcomer, but Shisui's reputation as an Uchiha prodigy earned him respect. Besides, Takagi Shinji didn't fancy his odds. He could feel how far beyond chuunin level this child might be. Please instruct me, Shisui said. Shinji-sensei, let me do it. You can watch closely from the side, Uesugi Toru volunteered. He was the best among his peers and wanted to measure himself against a genuine genius. He wasn't confident he would win, but he believed he could hold his own for a while. Are you sure? Takagi asked, already doubtful. Uesugi had merit, but he wasn't in the same world as a prodigy like Shisui. It's rare to meet someone like him. I want to test myself, Uesugi insisted. All right, you go, Takagi conceded, hoping the lesson would humble his overconfident disciple. Battle start. They moved. Uesugi charged forward, drawing shuriken and throwing them. Shisui's face didn't change. He tossed his own shuriken. The metal sang as the blades collided and clattered to the ground. On the surface, the exchange seemed even, but Shisui had waited until Uesugi finished his throw before releasing his. Even in that, Shisui had intercepted every one of Uesugi's shuriken easily. When Uesugi closed to 5 meters, he burst chakra and used the body flicker technique to appear at Shisui's side to strike. Shisui anticipated it, barely shifting his body, and the punch missed. Uesugi followed up with kicks, pressing himself to the limit, but he couldn't even touch Shisui's clothing. Fire release, great fireball technique. Uesugi created distance, formed hand seals, and released a fireball. Mu Yue's ninjutsu, Shisui thought. Mu Yue had taught nature transformation and developed a set of D-rank techniques, later refined into C-rank versions. The Great Fireball was one of them. Shisui formed seals too, but he deliberately dampened his chakra so the technique wouldn't injure his teammates. Still, even with reduced power, his Great Fireball far outclassed Uesugi's. Before the fireballs met, Uesugi could already tell which was stronger. The 2 fireballs collided, and Shisui's utterly dominated, swallowing Uesugi's. Uesugi's fighting spirit flickered, and his instincts drove him to dodge. But Shisui didn't press a destructive advantage. He moved with the body flicker technique, held a kunai to Uesugi's throat, and stopped. Uesugi's eyes widened. He had expected a longer fight, but hadn't imagined Shisui's speed and precision. If Shisui had truly gone all out, the match would have been over almost instantly. Instead, he'd let it play out enough to gauge his teammate and to spare him. Toru, you're a bit overconfident, Kobayashi Kenji said. On paper, it had looked like a back and forth, but once Shisui took the initiative, Uesugi had been finished in an instant. Miyashita Yuki's surprise was plain. Seeing an 8-year-old dominate a 16-year-old chuunin was a different kind of impact than just hearing about it. Uesugi had only one thought. This kid is 8 years old? He accepted that Shisui's fire release could be stronger. Ninjutsu relied on talent. But Shisui's taijutsu was something else. How could an 8-year-old have such physical control and speed? Had he started training in the womb? Takagi Shinji patted his overconfident disciple on the back. Now you know what a true genius is. You have a long way to go. He didn't wait for Uesugi's reply. Shisui, do you want to rest, or shall we go again? You were probably holding back to avoid injuring him, right? Let's start now, Shisui said. He hadn't spent much effort in the first fight, so he didn't need rest. Uesugi moved aside to watch, nursing the sting of the reprimand more than his defeat. He felt the outcome might be different against a jonin like Takagi, reasoning that a special jonin would force Shisui to use more of his true strength. What followed surprised him. The rhythm of Shisui's fight with Takagi was the same as before. In taijutsu, Takagi couldn't gain ground and was gradually forced back. In fire release, Takagi's techniques were overwhelmed by Shisui's. When they used the same nature fire techniques, Shisui's fire still engulfed Takagi's. The 3 disciples watched in stunned silence. When 2 ninjutsu of the same nature clash, the stronger simply overwhelms the weaker. There's no trick. Takagi, their guiding jonin, had been put on the defensive by an 8-year-old. Sweat soaked his back. Whether from exertion or the heat of Shisui's fire release, his face flushed red. Monstrously strong, Takagi breathed. He'd expected talent, but the reality of facing Shisui was disorienting. His combat experience told him Shisui hadn't gone all out. Had he done so, someone would have been seriously injured. Still, having such a powerful teammate was an advantage he could accept. It was mildly embarrassing. He'd lectured a disciple, only to be outmatched himself, but he swallowed his pride. Shisui officially joined Takagi Shinji's squad and began missions with them. Yet at first, he felt out of step with the team. The 3 teammates maintained a subtle coolness around him, a feeling Shisui hadn't experienced since he traveled with the elders of the Uchiha clan. He'd spent most of his time after ninja school training with Mu Yue and his students, so he wasn't used to it. He guessed at the reason, but wasn't completely certain. He didn't let it change him, though. On a risky mission not long after, Shisui used his Sharingan to detect and nullify a sneak attack, preventing injuries to Kobayashi Kenji and Miyashita Yuki. Afterward, the coolness vanished. "Shisui, thank you so much. If you hadn't acted so fast, we'd have been out for a while," Kobayashi said gratefully. Miyashita smiled and nudged Kobayashi. "Not everyone is so cold-hearted, you know. Sorry, Kenji's not great with words. Don't take it personally, Shisui." Through their interactions, it became clear Shisui wasn't uncaring. But Miyashita had worried because Uchiha were known for strong clan identity, and she feared Shisui might be hurt by their initial distance. "I don't mind," Shisui said, shaking his head. If someone had been actively slandering the Uchiha, he would be upset. But Kobayashi hadn't been attacking the clan. His attitude was more typical of folks who keep to themselves. From his own knowledge of the clan, Shisui knew some Uchiha did disregard those outside their circle. When outsiders responded coolly, those Uchiha met it with even greater distance, and pride would keep them from explaining. "I need to change the Uchiha image among Konoha," Shisui realized. Not every clan member could prove themselves like he had. Many clung to the arrogance of a noble clan. If he could act in a way that softened that reputation, maybe other Uchiha wouldn't reflexively push people away, and maybe those people would give them a fair chance.